Hello and welcome to Six Part. Today I'm going to start a new series, What If Deku Had Electro's Power, Part 1. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Aizawa was walking home from another mission on a pleasant, warm night. As he made his way down an alley to his house, he said, "Man, those missions really wear me out, even though I usually work in the dark and sleep whenever I want to." After a while, there were shouts, little explosions, and someone running. He muttered, "What is that I'm hearing? Don't let him escape." He heard from behind him. A child of about 8 years old ran past him just as Aizawa turned around. The boy glanced at Aizawa but continued to run. A few men rushed past Aizawa, who was too shocked to respond. One man yelled, "We have to capture him." The statement, "that boy," his eyes were full of fear, was successfully evoked by Aizawa. Then he whirled around and chased after them. It didn't take Aizawa long to catch up because he had developed a lot of strength, speed, and endurance from his hero work. One of them yelled, "Get back or you brat. Our boss wants to see you." "Leave me alone," Izuku yelled. The man at the front was shooting fireballs into the air, and Aizawa saw it. Because of the other men in front of him, Aizawa was unable to erase his quirk. Izuku saw the fireballs coming and used his lightning to charge around him before they could reach him. Then, to avoid the fireballs, Izuku leapt from wall to wall. He eventually turned, only to discover it was a dead end. Even though there was no way out, he continued to run. The men cried out, "We've got you now." Izuku was hit by fireballs once more, but he continued to run straight ahead, jumped, and ran up the wall. He flipped a couple of times before landing behind Aizawa and fleeing once more. According to one of the men, "Who might you be?" Aizawa ignored the question and asked, "Why are you after that kid?" He said, "None of your business, now get lost before you get killed," as his fingers and arms grew razor sharp. The man then charged at Aizawa, who said, "I'd like to see you try." Aizawa pounded the man after activating his quirk to reverse the man's quirk. Aizawa repeated, "Next one, tell me, why are you after that kid?" One of the men said, We're just following orders, man." Aizawa said, "I see, next question, who is your boss?" The man gave up without saying anything else, saying, "Oh no way, our boss is way scarier than you are." Izuku was gone when Aizawa turned around. As he called the police to have the criminals picked up, Aizawa thought, "I wonder why he was running and who it was. He didn't look that old to me. I wonder if he's going to be okay." He continued to run at Izuku, unsure of where to go, just running. He finally came to a halt at a huge pond in the park. He descended the hill and took a seat near the water. Izuku was a young boy. He is currently 8 years old, and has been evading capture for more than a year. Izuku and his mother were attacked when he was 7 years old, and the attackers were pursuing Izuku. His mother gave him some time to escape, but he never learned what had happened to her. He did know that more people had come after him and that the attack had been going on for more than a year. Izuku pulled his legs to his face, put his arms on his knees, and then rested his head on his arms. "I wonder how Mom is doing, and how long can I keep this up?" he said. "I've gotten more used to using my quirk in that past year though. They never managed to catch me. I normally run using my own speed, and only use it when I need to, but maybe it's time I learn to fight back properly. I can use it a bit to fight, but I'll need to learn how to fight," Izuku said with a clenched fist. 8 years have passed. Once more, the sound of running filled the alleys, but this time, Izuku, who was 8 years old, was running to escape from people who wanted to catch him. Instead, he was hurt and was running to survive. As he continued to run, Izuku said, "Damn, how many of them are there? I defeated at least 30 of them, but there are still so many of them." In addition to a slit on his back and cuts on his arms, he also had burns and bruises all over his body. Unexpectedly, a large group of villains ambushed Izuku. Despite being outnumbered, he defeated 30 of them, but more appeared after they were defeated. However, since he began running 9 years ago, Izuku had changed. He was now able to fight with his quirk, but he also became quieter. He hardly spoke anymore and hardly displayed any emotion. Izuku landed on a roof, leapt between walls, and continued to run. He was pursued by some of the villains who also climbed onto the roof. A man by the name of Muscular was one of those bad guys. He yelled, "Come on brat, stop running already." When Izuku turned to look behind him, he saw several other villains running with Muscular. Then, as lightning whirled around him, Izuku used his quirk to jump from roof to roof. With a hint of frustration, Muscular exclaimed, "This kid is such a pain in the ass." Aizawa, meanwhile, was in Class 1A, his classroom. Welcome class, I'll be your homeroom teacher from now on, Aizawa said. I still can't believe Izuku didn't get into UA, he was always so hell-bent on becoming a hero, Bakugo said. Aizawa said, Izuku? Who is that? He's a childhood friend of mine, however he went missing when he was 7 inches, Bakugo said. Aizawa said, 7? Can you tell me more about him? Sure, he has big green hair and freckles on his face, but I guess the best way to recognize him is his quirk, said Bakugo. Aizawa thought, that all sounds familiar. Aizawa inquired, what's his quirk? The statement, he has a lightning quirk, was made by Bakugo, surprising Aizawa. Aizawa said, then it might be him I saw back then. Bakugo yelled, wait what, and stood up. 8 years ago, I went home from a mission, I heard some yells, running and explosions, and a kid that looked like the description you gave me passed me by, he got away with a lightning quirk, explained Aizawa. Anxiously, Bakugo said, that's definitely Izuku. Where is he now? Even when everyone entered the room, the class was somewhat taken aback because Bakugo was a rude jerk, but he genuinely cared about this. Aizawa said, I honestly don't know, that time was the only time I saw him, I don't know how he's doing or where as something unexpectedly flashed into the classroom through the window. The window was broken, and whatever crashed into the wall was partially covered by a smokescreen, but tables and chairs were pushed aside, and some students were also pushed away. Abruptly, someone emerged from the smoke. Izuku was the one. Both Bakugo and Aizawa recognized him right away. Izuku! Both of them exclaimed. Despite glancing at them, Izuku fled as Muscular, whose body was covered in muscle veins, leapt inside. He hurried to catch up with Izuku as he ran out the door. He yelled, I'll still get you, you little runt, as he chased after Izuku. After hearing the loud noise, the other teachers arrived in the hallway. They attempted to block Izuku because they believed he was the culprit after seeing him running. Despite being aware of this, Izuku charged his quirk and managed to get past the teachers by using the roof and even the walls. Izuku felt as though he was running in circles as he continued to run through the halls. Abruptly, a wall collapsed, and Muscular emerged. He grabbed Izuku's head and slammed him through another wall, saying, I'm tired of you running around all the time. Muscular continued to run forward and crashed Izuku through another wall, but this time they were outside, even if it was a few floors higher. When Muscular threw Izuku to the ground, Izuku was able to catch his balance and land safely, but Muscular also did. The bad news is that all of the villains who were pursuing him had caught up to him and surrounded him. Muscular said, there is nowhere left for you to run. TSH was all Izuku could say in response to Muscular's lightning-fast charge. Izuku was surrounded, and Class 1A was staring out the window. They were concerned as well as shocked by what had happened so quickly. They didn't know Izuku, but it was never good to have a child fight so many bad guys. Aizawa stopped Bakugo from jumping outside to assist him. Bakugo exclaimed, let me go. I have to help him. You can't, there is too many for you to face, and the big guy is called Muscular. He killed a lot of pros before. We don't know about the others, their quirks or how they fight. Let us teachers handle this, Aizawa said as he ran out the door. Bakugo gritted his teeth and continued to watch. Izuku assumed a fighting stance and looked around at all the bad guys, but none of them made any move. Izuku turned to face Muscular, who was grinning maniacally. Muscular said, so you're going to fight now? Well, at least it's better than running, but what do you think you can do, kid? But Izuku didn't answer. Muscular charged at Izuku, saying, the silent treatment, huh? I can live with that. Let's make our fists do the talking. Izuku put a hand on Muscular's head and jumped, pushing himself up just in time to avoid ice spears and fireballs. Uraraka said, they're not even fighting fair. Iida said, true, but notice how composed he is. Asui said, yeah, it's like this is normal for him. Izuku jumped back and landed once more. Muscular lunged at him once more, but Izuku ducked under the blow and started to flip in midair when he abruptly spread out, sending lightning from his body to all of the bad guys. The villains around him attempted to dodge it, but the lightning simply bent toward them, still striking them. However, Muscular blocked the attack with the veins covering his body, so he didn't really notice it. It's not a bad attack, it might work on those weaklings, however it won't work on me, Muscular said. Izuku said gravely, it wasn't to take you out, but the real fight starts now. Then, as Izuku punched Muscular between the lungs, he vanished and reappeared a few centimeters away. Muscular coughed as a result, and he was then hit by lightning as well. Muscular yelled, you brat, you'll pay for that. Muscular tried to punch Izuku after he leapt back, but just as the blow was about to land, Izuku leapt sideways to avoid it. Muscular kept pursuing him, but each time he attempted an attack, Izuku leapt to the side or back to dodge the blow. Muscular yelled, "Stop making fun of me," as all of the teachers emerged. But when they got outside, they saw Izuku evading all of Muscular's moves and the villains on the ground. Muscular yelled angrily, "I told you to stop mocking me," and threw another punch, but this time Izuku resisted and stopped the blow. Muscular then attempted another punch, but it was also intercepted. Izuku clenched his fists. Muscular said, "Let go of me, you little brat. I'll make sure to kill you." Izuku gripped Muscular's fists tighter and said, "Keep talking big, it'll only make you look weak." Then, Muscular was struck by lightning once more. As Izuku used it through his hands, lightning continued to damage the muscle. He finally released Muscular, who stumbled backward a few paces. He said, "You little she," and then passed out. Kurogiri said, "Teach another plan in a failure," as he appeared out of nowhere. Then, as Muscular and the other villains were removed, Kurogiri looked at Izuku. Izuku collapsed onto his butt after closing his eyes. He heard someone ask, "Are you alright, kid?" And as he turned to look, he noticed Midnight sitting on her knees. All he did was nod and turn away. She walked up to him and said, "Let's get you fixed up. You have some nasty injuries." When Izuku saw this, he took a few steps back and leapt to his feet. "It's all right, we don't want to harm you, we just want to get you fixed up. You can do whatever you want after that," Aizawa said. Izuku recognized him as he looked at him. Izuku nodded and went with Aizawa to the recovery girl, who used her special talent to heal him by kissing him. "I've healed you with my quirk, however it will drain some of your energy because my quirk speeds up the healing process and that takes a lot of energy," said the recovery girl. Izuku merely gave a nod. Then Izuku got to his feet. A slightly agitated recovery girl said, "Didn't you hear me? You should rest. You've lost a lot of energy with just healing those wounds." As he left the room, Izuku said, "Thanks for treating my wounds, I've got enough energy." Aizawa inquired, "So where are you going now?" He uttered, "I don't know," Aizawa said, "You can always stay here at UA." After giving it some thought, Izuku turned to leave. "We'll meet again, I'm sure of it." Even though Izuku had left UA, he had not been attacked since that day. For several days now, Izuku had been strolling through the city in peace. Izuku had frequently visited his old home, but he had never seen his mother there. In fact, nothing had changed since the day he left. Izuku pondered, "I wonder if she got away, or maybe she got taken away, or worst case she got killed. However, I haven't been attacked in a while. Either they believe I'm too strong or they're preparing another attack." Izuku jumped on a roof and moved from roof to roof. He has been fighting villains who attacked other people ever since he was fleeing from the groups of villains, so he was essentially fighting every day. However, this gave him a great deal of endurance, which aided in both powering up and mastering his quirk. Izuku thought, "Maybe I should go apologize for breaking UA's windows, but I just shot inside and got attacked, and we even broke down walls." After that, he headed for UA, eliminating a few minor villains along the way, but it was only a sweep. He eventually arrived at UA's walls, but before he could see Aizawa in the front, a bus was leaving. "Did he save me back then? I wonder where they're heading. I recognized that man from years ago. Or did he also intend to capture me?" However, Izuku reasoned that he wouldn't have simply let me go like he did if he had intended to capture me. Even though the bus was far ahead, Izuku was still able to see it and follow it. He didn't really hurry to follow them, and he only used his quirk to jump towards the next roof. Perhaps I should follow them and see what they are going to do, and I can also apologize to him about breaking the windows and the walls, Izuku thought as he leapt on a roof once more. But as Izuku approached, he heard a lot of noise, and upon seeing where the bus had stopped, he saw a student running out, looking somewhat alarmed. Izuku pondered, "What's going on there?" He saw Kurogiri disappear and a hero on the ground as he leapt to his feet and ran in the direction of the door from which the student had fled. Izuku entered the room. He noticed some students gathered around the downed pro hero. Izuku caught the student's attention. Uraraka said, "Hey, it's you from the other day." After giving her a quick glance, Izuku moved forward to the stairs and peered downstairs. Asui and Mineta were hiding and watching, but he also saw Aizawa fighting villains. However, Izuku then focused on Kurogiri, who showed up beside Tamura Shigaraki. Being on the run from villains for years taught him to hear even the smallest sounds, which allowed him to hear them talking from a great distance. This allowed him to hear them even from way over at the entrance. "I'm sorry, Tamura Shigaraki, one of them found an opening to escape," said Kurogiri. Even though Izuku said, "Tamura Shigaraki," in a quiet voice, the students could still hear him and were curious about his meaning. "Kurogiri, if you weren't so useful, I would have killed you right here and now, said Tamura. Shigaraki and Kurogiri. Izuku continued, seemingly repeating their names to himself to help him remember. Oh well, let's kill some of those kids before All Might arrives. It will certainly be entertaining to see All Might's face when he notices his dear students crumbled to dust, said Tamura. Tamura said, Nomu, get rid of that pro over there. Izuku scowled. That thing. What is it? He referred to it as a Nomu, but Izuku thought it was just too buff to be useful. The Nomu abruptly vanished and materialized behind Aizawa, slamming him from the side and shattering his right arm. He attempted to erase the Nomu's quirk as Aizawa lay on the ground, but it struck him and broke his left arm like a small twig. Izuku saw this and gritted his teeth. Then, as he attempted to grab Asui's face, he saw Tamura move and suddenly materialize in front of her. But before he could, Aizawa erased Tamura's quirk with his own. Tamura said, Pros are just so cool, as he released her head and gave it another go. Aizawa's head was then smashed into the ground by the Nomu. He recalled how his mother attempted to buy him time to flee when he witnessed Aizawa attempting to save his students despite having 2 broken arms and an enemy on his back. Izuku suddenly made a lightning bow because he was unable to contain himself any longer. Wow, that's incredible. Lightning arrow split shot, Izuku said calmly as his lightning arrow shot forward at incredible speed and then halfway blasted open, creating multiple lightning arrows that shot through all the villains on the ground, pierced Tamura's arm, and pierced the Nomu's back. Uraraka said this as Izuku looked at her and aimed. When Tamura drew back his numb arm, Asui and Mineta hurried to the spot where the shot had come from and saw Izuku standing there brandishing a lightning bow, aiming it at the Nomu. Lightning arrow, exploding thunder, he said as he fired the arrow at the Nomu, and when it hit its back, it exploded, blowing the Nomu away. All of the students behind Izuku exclaimed, wow. Then he abruptly vanished from beside them and materialized beside Aizawa. Izuku raised Aizawa, who said, thanks for blowing that thing off me and saving my students. That is Izuku Midoriya. Izuku simply nodded. The master wants him, but he'll have to do it from his corpse, Kurogiri said. No one attacks me like that and gets away with it. Nomu, come back here and kill this brat, yelled Tamura. The moment Tamura yelled that, the Nomu materialized in front of Izuku, but Izuku didn't look or react in shock. Instead, he slammed straight at him, but just as the punch was about to land, Izuku vanished and materialized in front of Asui and Mineta. Izuku channeled the lightning through his body and leapt downstairs after he lifted them up and then reappeared upstairs, setting them down. So tell me, what do you have to gain from saving those kids? Why save them when you're alone and have no one? Kurogiri inquired. Izuku didn't answer. All he did was flash lightning around him. I see the silent type still, Kurogiri said. Are you finished talking, Kurogiri? Tamura said. Then we can kill this little brat. Get him, Nomu. As the Nomu then sped toward Izuku, Tamura said. That kid is incredible. It's hard to believe that he was that scared boy from back then, but those 8 years did change him. He almost doesn't show any emotion in his face, and he became so quiet, Aizawa thought as he lay on his back. Izuku jumped to the side to avoid the Nomu, but he continued charging at him, but Izuku was faster and managed to dodge every hit. Students at the entrance watched in awe. He's more of a pain than anyone else, so it's time for Nomu to take things seriously. Hey, Izuku said with a faint smile, if he can keep up, then it's time I start countering, Tamura said as the Nomu suddenly gained a lot of speed and was actually able to keep up with Izuku to some extent. Izuku kicked the Nomu's leg as it lost its balance, then pulled it over his shoulder and smashed it into the ground. Nomu threw a punch at Izuku, but Izuku returned the blow by punching Nomu's fist, which produced a shockwave of power and a tiny discharge of lightning. In order to avoid being hit by a surprise attack, Izuku jumped back to create some distance after the crash left a small crater in the ground. However, as soon as he landed, the Nomu appeared behind him. The Nomu slammed down on him from behind when Izuku saw it, and he was able to block it, but the force caused him to crack through the ground a little. Izuku then put his hand on its chest. Raging thunder, Izuku said as Nomu was hit by several lightning strikes and lightning sprang from Izuku's body in its direction. The Nomu started to smoke from the lightning as it retreated a few steps and its arms hung limply next to its body. Nomu, what's going on? Damn it, said Tamura. Don't you dare lose to this little brat. You were meant to be able to defeat All Might. As he ran towards Izuku, Tamura yelled. Izuku tried to grab him, but he deflected the hand and was sent flying before he could counter. Izuku then crashed into the roof and began to fall slowly. Izuku used his lightning to keep him in the air just before he hit the ground, so he would at least avoid that damage. When he opened his eyes, he saw the Nomu coming from him as it slammed him towards the ground. You see, Nomu is much more powerful than you may imagine. You can't kill it because it not only absorbs shocks but also regenerates itself, Tamura said. The only way to kill it is to burn its flesh away or cut it off, said Tamura. As he covered his hands in lightning and formed claws out of them, Izuku said, should have said that from the start. Izuku then launched at the Nomu once more and slashed its chest, leaving slashing marks on it. In addition to the Nomu becoming numb from the attack, his wound was not healing. No way. That's functioning. Kurogiri, yelled Tamura. Then he yelled. Kurogiri then made several warp portals around Izuku, and Nomu leapt into one of them with great speed. He then materialized from the warp on Izuku's left, appearing behind him and attempting to punch again before Izuku grabbed its arm and tossed it away. He then produced a lightning bow by stopping his claws. Paralyzed shot, Izuku stated as he shot Kurogiri with it. Once he got hit with it, the portals disappeared. I can't activate, Kurogiri said, my quirk, as his entire body went numb. We're losing to a little brat like him, damn it. The teachers entered at that point, Iida to the side and All Might in front. I've returned with backup, Iida yelled, and Nezu and the teachers saw that Aizawa and 13 were in a state of unconsciousness, but Aizawa continued to look downstairs. Every teacher followed suit, observing Izuku standing in front of the villains as lightning occasionally sped around him. Then the Nomu reappeared and struck Izuku, who deflected it. The Nomu then launched an extremely powerful and swift barrage, but Izuku was able to block and even counter each blow with a punch of his own. What sort of creatures are these? This is no time to stand here and watch, Midnight said. The students have been divided, so everyone should go to the facilities and save the students. Would you all please help that little boy fight? Nezu replied, yes, sir. As they parted ways, they all said. Everybody might have leapt downstairs, but just as he did, the Nomu materialized in front of him and began to punch, but Izuku stopped him by kicking the Nomu in the head and smashing it into the ground. As Izuku simply looked and focused on the battle, All Might said, thank you, young man. What do you think about us fighting together to defeat this thing? All Might held out his hand and asked. This kid is very powerful, he's been fighting this thing on his own, something that left the teachers in that state. All Might thought as Izuku glanced at him and then at All Might's hand. All right, Izuku said, grabbing All Might's hand, but a flicker of lightning passed through his hand and All Might felt the shock but did not pull back. Izuku said, step back for a bit. All Might retreated a step as Izuku put his hands on the ground. All Might could see that Izuku was exerting a lot of force in his attack when the ground suddenly split open, even beneath the Nomu, and a line of lightning emerged from beneath it, sending the Nomu skyward. Izuku said, thanks. Let's finish this thing, he added as the Nomu stood up. You really are powerful, young man, All Might said, but even as it lay on the ground, lightning was still swirling around it. All Might said as they both began launching a flurry of punches at the Nomu. All Might's punches were very powerful, and Izuku's punches were also very powerful, but they also contained lightning, which gradually numbed the Nomu's body. They noticed that the punches were beginning to have an effect after a few. What's going on? He's got shock absorption, right? All of this should be manageable for him. I see, normally it would. But shock absorb has a limit to what it can absorb, Tamura said in shock. But Izuku's blows are counting as double hits not only because his punch counts but also because his lightning does, Kurogiri said. Are you able to maintain this pace? Even though he struggled to keep up with Izuku's speed, All Might managed to match it and pull back for a final blow as Izuku charged his lightning. Izuku asked as he punched even faster. Ultra Plus. All Might shouted as he punched the Nomu one last time. At the same time Izuku used his move. Dragon Thunder. As ferocious lightning struck the Nomu, he said, both strikes struck him simultaneously, sending it hurtling away at breakneck speed. All Might was breathing heavily, and since Nomu was designed to defeat him at his best, he had to use more than 100% for each blow. In addition, he had to match Izuku's speed, which further depleted All Might's strength. No. 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 This isn't possible, Tamura bellowed. I'll kill myself. Tamura yelled as he dashed towards All Might, who, despite having reached his limit, assumed a fighting stance. However, before Tamura could get to All Might, Izuku appeared in front of him and punched him in the stomach while lightning blazed through Tamura's body. Tamura's body was numb from the lightning and the excruciating pain of the punch, making it difficult for him to move. This is it, villains, All Might said. You're outnumbered and have nowhere to run to, he added. Kurogiri. As Kurogiri succeeded in removing the paralyzing arrow from his body, Tamura said. Kurogiri swiftly wrapped his warping power around Tamura and disappeared. All Might said, "It's finally over." Izuku, who was bruised but not seriously injured, simply turned around and headed for the stairs. "Where are you going?" "I don't know," Izuku said. "Half Slim?" All Might asked. "So why don't you join us in Ua?" Izuku turned to face All Might, who said, "It seems to me that you don't have anywhere to go, and maybe it would be better to stay in a place filled with heroes and heroes in training, rather than on your own in the streets, especially with those villains after you." "That's true," Izuku replied. All Might smiled and said, "Just come with us, we could use a hero with your power and skill." Izuku quickly replied, "All right." Shortly after the battle, ambulances arrived and took 13 and Aizawa to the hospital. All Might fled quickly because his secret was about to be revealed to all the students. Aizawa told Nezu about Izuku the other day, and All Might informed him that Izuku would be joining them at UA. "Hey there, I'm Nezu. May I ask what your name is?" The creature that resembled a bear or mouse said, "My name is Izuku." Izuku replied, "It's good to meet you, Izuku. Shall we head to Ua?" "That's fine too, I'll come with you, but is it okay if I borrow your shoulder then?" Nezu asked, and Izuku simply nodded. "Well, let's get on the bus then," Nezu said. "Actually, I'd rather walk, it's not that far anyway," Izuku said. Nezu said, "If it's okay with you, I'd like to talk to you and learn more about you." Izuku nodded once more. Although Class 1A was informed that Izuku would also be visiting Ua, they were unaware of this. Nezu was on Izuku's shoulder as he began to walk back. "So, Izuku, may I ask? You were on the RRUN form people, according to one of my teachers, Aizawa, who I heard met you 8 years ago. However, who were you running form for?" Izuku replied, "I see, and how long has that been going on?" Nezu inquired. "Those were villains trying to get my power to their side, they wanted to force me to work for them." Nezu inquired. "I've been running since I was 7. Some people caught wind of my power and tried to kidnap me. My mother shielded me so I could get away. I don't know what happened to her, however ever since that day, I've been chased and attacked every day." Izuku said. "That's horrible, I'm sorry to hear that." Nezu responded. "Is it accurate?" Izuku inquired. "Is that accurate?" Izuku responded. "Well, if you really want to, yes, you've shown you've got the heart of a hero by risking your lives for the students and teachers, and you've got a lot of power and skill, so if you really want to become a hero, we'd gladly accept you." Nezu inquired, "That I can join Ua?" "All I ever wanted was to become a hero with my power, but I've changed. I'm only talking with you to explain things, but normally I'm very quiet, and I barely have any emotions left. However, my will to save others never stopped," Izuku said. "Tell me, Izuku. I've been hearing lately about a mysterious individual who has a lightning quirk that allows them to quickly defeat villains. Is that you?" Nezu said, "Yeah," and Izuku quickly replied, "I see, they also have quite some names for you as well." "Like what?" "Names like Lightning Flash, and I also heard people refer to you as Raiko. It's said that's the name of a Japanese thunder god, and people actually started calling you that because you appear and dissipate all while defeating the villains," Nezu explained, grinning as he awoke some curiosity in Izuku. Izuku said, "Well, I like Raiko. Why don't you make that your hero name?" "That's an idea," Izuku replied in response to Nezu's question. "When I join Ua, where will I be staying? What class will I be in? Do you have a residence hall where students must live? Is it okay if someone joins in the middle of the year?" Izuku inquired. "You'll be joining Class 1A, they have an empty spot, and you've already met them. As for the living part, we have a dorm system where a class stays in one dorm. All with separate rooms of course. You'll be staying there as well from now on," Nezu clarified. "And don't worry about joining mid-year, we allowed you to join Ua, if it wasn't alright we wouldn't have said so in the first place," Nezu concluded. "All right then," Izuku replied as they made their way back to UA. While traveling to Ua, Izuku spotted a burglar and aimed a lightning bow at him. Nezu sat on his shoulder and watched intently, curious to see what Izuku could do. "Lightning chain shot," Izuku said, firing the lightning arrow in the direction of the burglar, which burst open as it approached the burglar and wrapped around him like chains. The police apprehended the burglar and returned the stolen bag to its owner. "Thank you so much." Izuku simply nodded as the person said this to him. "That was very impressive, Izuku." Nezu said. "Thank you, I can make a bow made of lightning and even have some moves for it. I can use my lightning in long-ranged and close combat, even without the bow, but it helps with things like this," Izuku said. Izuku then proceeded to walk to Ua, where the teachers were waiting for Nezu and Izuku. Welcome back, sir, and welcome to Izuku, said Midnight. Thanks, said Izuku quietly but softly. The teachers and Nezu then left, leaving Izuku with Class 1A. Izuku was then taken to his dorm, first shown to his room so he knew where he would sleep. The students were all shocked to see Izuku there, and he just sat down on the couch because he didn't really know what to do. I'm apparently a new classmate of yours, Izuku said. Awesome. Hello. Welcome to the club, Mina yelled. She yelled. Give me your name. Izuku Midoriya, he replied when Uraraka asked, and then everyone introduced themselves and their peculiarities. So, Izuku, what was that lightning bow you used back there? Uraraka inquired with excitement. It's a bow made from my quirk, and I also got some special moves with it, Izuku said, getting back up and recreating the bow. I can figure out both close and long range with my quirk. Awesome, I also have an electric quirk, but I can't use it like you do, said Kaminari. Izuku said, really? Touch my finger with your fingertip. Why? Inquired Kaminari. Izuku simply sat there and held out his hand without saying anything. After that, Kaminari touched Izuku's finger with his fingertip because they were sparking, but this caused Kaminari's lightning to fly out, burning Izuku's brain. He made a foolish face and exclaimed, "Yay yay!" as Jiru burst out laughing. With the exception of Izuku, who had a blank expression, everyone else began to laugh as well. That caused some of the students to become a little anxious. From the stairs they heard, "Izuku?" Bakugo stood there, and everyone, including Izuku, turned to face the stairs. As Izuku said, "Hi Bakugo." Bakugo nearly screamed, "So it really is you. Where have you been? You've been away for 9 years." Izuku's expression changed from blank to somewhat dejected. "Everywhere," was his response. "After you disappeared, Inko disappeared as well. No one has seen her since. Do you know where she is?" asked Bakugo. "No," Izuku replied. Kirishima said, "Wait, what's going on? You guys know each other?" "Yeah," Izuku said quickly. "We've been childhood friends, however when we turned 7, Izuku suddenly disappeared, and so did his mother," Bakugo said. With some concern, Asui inquired, "What happened to you and your mother?" Izuku explained, "My mom and I were attacked when I was 7 years old. She protected me from the bad guys so I could get away, and I haven't seen her since." Everyone appeared a little concerned. "So, what have you been up to for the last 9 years?" "Surviving," he replied when Asui asked. "Ever since that day, I've been running and fighting every day as villains chased me, just like the day I first got to Ua," Izuku said. "So, the assault from that time wasn't the first one?" They all had wide eyes as Momo said, "It's been like that every day for 9 years straight." "Well, I guess that's why you're not tired after fighting so intense," Ojiro replied. "You gain a lot of stamina by running and fighting every day," Izuku responded. "You joined Ua now?" "Yep," Izuku replied. "You don't talk that much, do you?" Bakugo inquired. Toru inquired. "I talk now to answer questions. I barely talked at all the past years. I don't even know what smiling and fun are anymore, but I've gotten very quiet, apart from answering questions," Izuku said. Everyone except Bakugo and Izuku laughed when Asui said, "What did you say, you damn frog?" "I'm just glad you're alive and in Ua now," Bakugo said. "Who would have thought that Bakugo can actually be nice if he tried?" Asui said. Bakugo shouted. "Well, we have some time to get to know each other. Because of the villain attack, we've been given Sam's free time from school till Monday," Momo clarified. The days went by rather rapidly, with everyone staying in the dorm and chatting and getting to know one another. Izuku didn't really talk to anyone, he just listened and responded to inquiries. Izuku's first day of school finally arrived on Monday, and he was a little anxious because he had no idea what to anticipate. However, his anxiety was relieved when Aizawa entered the room like a bandaged mummy. "Good morning, class. Glad to see you're all doing well. Izuku, good to see you again too, and thanks again for saving us," Aizawa said. "No problem, I'm sorry for wrecking the windows and walls the other day," Izuku replied. "That's been handled, don't worry about it. You might not know me yet. I'm Aizawa, hero name erase your head. I'm your homeroom teacher," Aizawa replied. After classes began, Izuku initially struggled to keep up because he was at least a week behind, but he quickly and effortlessly caught up, despite not having studied for 9 years. When it was time for lunch, everyone went to the cafeteria to get some food. While everyone was seated in groups, Izuku simply grabbed some food and sat by himself. Someone other than Izuku abruptly said, "So and what do we have here? You look like a wimp." "I heard they accepted someone in the middle of the school year, and I heard he saved a group of students from a villain attack, but I doubt it's true," The boy beside him uttered those words. While everyone else was observing the bullies, Izuku remained silent and continued to eat his food without paying any attention to them. "You're not even brave enough to respond with something. How much of a coward are you?" the man said. "Talking to someone who isn't worth it is pointless," Izuku said. "Wow, what a big mouth for a wimp. However, Class 1A should be the ones who truly feel ashamed of themselves." Izuku turned to face him angrily as he yelled. "I mean, come on, aiming to become heroes, and all they could do was send one person running back with his tail between his legs just to get back up," he said. Iida tried to contain himself by gritting his teeth and clenching his fist. "I'd bet if you faced what we did, you'd be pissing your pants even now," Asui said. "So the pitiful losers believe they can fool me?" the boy asked, appearing in front of Asui with the legs of a leopard, but Izuku was already standing beside him when he arrived. Izuku said, "Try it, I'll show you fear." Everyone was taken aback by Izuku's abrupt transformation. For everyone's information, Class 1A wasn't pathetic or a coward. Sure, they were scared, but everyone is scared by what they faced. It was their first week, and they saw their teachers getting hurt and being beaten. Some of them were scattered around, but they were fighting. However, we faved a creature that could kill All Might. There is nothing wrong with fearing something that's created to be able to kill the number one hero, Izuku said. From behind the bully, someone said, "I heard you fought that thing on your own until the teachers arrived." Izuku turned to see a blonde man with a cartoonish face and a cowlick, Mirio, standing behind the bully. Izuku replied, "That's true. Ha ha ha, and I have to think that this little weakling is as strong as anybody else. Keep me from laughing," the bully said. "Believe it or not, but this boy is on the same LVL as All Might. He might even be able to beat All Might with that quirk and his skill," Aizawa said as he entered the room. "So you even convinced the teachers of this?" the bully stated. Izuku just ignored it. "Hey, I'm speaking to you, and you ought to show your upperclassmen more respect," the boy said. Izuku said, "Respect is earned, not forced," which infuriated the man. "Seems I need to teach it to you," he said, with claws growing on his hands. "Go away from him. Shut up and stay out of this," the boy said as Izuku gazed at Najire, a long-haired girl with blue hair. Najire gave him a questioning glance before grinning and turning back to face the boy. "Leave him alone," she said, adding that he had done nothing wrong. "All right, then I'll begin with you," the boy said as he lunged toward Najire, but she had already left when he got there. When the bully turned to look behind him, he saw Izuku holding Najire where he had been standing. How did he? When the bully yelled, he spun around and prepared to launch, but as soon as he did, he felt lightning near his skin. Looking, he saw that Izuku's hand was covered in lightning, forming a claw, which he then placed in front of the bully's throat. "Are you still skeptical of what people have said? Or should I let you experience my power for yourself?" Izuku calmly said, "Just say so, and I'll give you the full force of it." Izuku's speed and composure astounded everyone, but the bully began to urinate. As he left, Izuku said, "And then you call my CLSS mates pathetic. You would have died in seconds if you faced what they did." When the bully became enraged and attempted to attack Izuku, he was struck by an energy beam, and Izuku looked up to see that Najire had attacked him. She winked and smiled at Izuku, who continued to stare at her until a tiny smile appeared on his face. Izuku continued to stare, thinking, "I don't know what it is, but something about this girl makes me want to smile. She's so bright, so beautiful, and even by looking at her, I can see that she's a very kind girl." As Aizawa nodded, Nezu said quietly on her shoulder, "It seems our Izuku has a bit of an interest in Najire." Well, he smiled a little, so it's a start to him opening up, but he is definitely interested in her, Aizawa said. Everyone returned to their classes when the bell rang, but Izuku couldn't help but keep looking at Najire. She abruptly said, "Hey, sorry for the trouble he caused," as she approached him. "It's okay, thanks for having my back," Izuku said, adding, "It felt nice someone actually having my back for once." "Say, do you want to hang out after school?" she asked him, looking at him curiously. "You seem like a really interesting person, and I'd love to learn more about you," Najire said. "We could talk some more." Izuku clarified, "Yeah, but you'll have to pick me up somewhere, because I don't really know the way here." "I'll pick you up after school in front of the school," she said. Izuku said, "All right, see you then." "Oh, and what's your name?" did he ask. "Yours and Najire Hato." "Izuku Midoriya," she said, and he replied, "All right, see you later, Izuku." As she danced a little in Olus and then ran off, she said with another smile and wink. She paused briefly, turned to face him, and gave him one last radiant smile before leaving. After school ended, Izuku was waiting for Najire in front of the school. Everyone was staring at him with interest when they realized he was genuinely waiting for someone. More students eventually left, and the man from the lunch break left as well. He appeared a little alarmed upon seeing Izuku and hurried back to the dorm. Najire said as she left, "Hey Izuku, I hope you haven't been waiting long. Snipe had to explain something before we were allowed to go." Izuku said, "Hey Najire, no, I haven't. Good to see you." "Wait, was that what I said? Why would I act in that way?" Then he thought, "I don't even know her." She smiled and said, "Well, I'm glad to see you two again." Mirio said, "Hey, Izuku was it?" as he approached them as well. Izuku said, "Yeah, what's your name?" "My name is Mirio. I'm sorry for not introducing earlier, and I'm sorry for my classmate his behavior," said Mirio. "It's okay," Izuku replied. As Tamaki nodded, Mirio said, "Oh yeah, this here is Tamaki. He's a bit shy and doesn't talk much. Is it alright if we join you guys for a little bit? I'm quite curious about you Izuku. Don't worry, we won't stay that long. We just wanted to know a bit more about you," Mirio responded. "I'm fine with it, but it depends on what Najire wants," Izuku said. She said somewhat dejectedly, "Well, I don't mind, but I really wanted to talk to you one-on-one." Mirio said, "Don't worry, we won't stay that long. I just wanted to ask a few things," and Najire smiled once more. Najire then inquired, "So, where do you want to go and talk?" "Somewhere nice and quiet, so I can relax a bit as well," Izuku said. "It sounds like the Park of Ua is a good spot then. You can enjoy the weather there. People do come there but only walk by, and you can choose to either sit on a picnic table or just lay down in the grass," Mirio said. Izuku said, "Sounds great." After that, they strolled over to Ue's park. As soon as he arrived, Izuku went straight to a large grassy area and simply let himself fall backwards. He relished the cool breeze, the lovely weather, and the sun, but most of all, the quiet, the absence of teachers and students talking about dull topics, and, best of all, the fact that he could finally unwind without having to keep an eye on his shoulder or pay attention to anything he heard. Izuku said, "This is fantastic." Mirio inquired, "Looks like this is your first time for this?" "Actually, I've laid like this a lot when I was a kid, but yeah, it's been a long time," Izuku said. Izuku inquired, "So, what did you want to ask Mirio?" "Actually, I was wondering what your quirk was, and how you got in Ua while the year had already started," Mirio responded. "Don't get me wrong, I don't have anything against you, but it made me curious. You didn't take the entrance exam, and you didn't get in by recommendations. From what I heard, Aizawa and Nezu asked you themselves." Mirio elaborates. "Well, I guess it does raise some questions. At least you ask about it instead like that other guy," Izuku said. Izuku made lightning appear around his hand while holding it up and using his quirk. "Oh, you have a lightning quirk? That's really awesome," said Mirio. "But isn't that something completely different from what you did in the cafeteria?" replied Mirio. Izuku questioned, "You mean this?" as a lightning claw formed on his hand. "Oh so, that claw is actually your hand covered in lightning. That's so cool," Mirio responded. Izuku said, "If you want, I can show you more about my quirk." Mirio said, "Yeah, I'd love to see it." Najire clarified, "I want to see too. It looks really interesting." Izuku then stood up and abruptly formed a lightning bow while extending his hand. He uttered the words, "Lightning arrow split shot," as he launched a lightning bolt that abruptly exploded, producing additional arrows that all flew into the center of the trees. "Wow, that's an amazing move, as well as incredible accuracy. That needs a lot of control," Mirio said. Izuku said uneasily, "I had a lot to practice on." Then Izuku took a seat again. "So, how did you make in Ua? I heard about Class 1A being attacked, and you mentioned something about it earlier, but we don't know the story," Mirio clarified. "I met Aizawa before. I was attacked by villains, and got launched into his classroom. I fought some villains and won. Aizawa then asked me if I wanted to join Ua. I declined at the time. However, the day of the attack I wanted to apologize for breaking the windows and walls, and noticed them going somewhere. I got curious and followed them," Izuku explained while lying on his back with his hands folded over his head. "Once I got closer, I saw one of the students run away from the building at high speed. I quickly got in and saw a teacher wounded on the floor. And Aizawa was being badly beaten. I recognized one of the villains as he was there on the previous attack on me. However, their leader was about to kill a student. I couldn't sit back any longer and joined the fight. I also fought a creature that was able to kill All Might at 100%. He had a quick called Shock Absorb and Regeneration. My claws of lightning created wounds on it that didn't get healed, and my lightning quirk helped with his Shock Absorb. One hit of mine counted double," Since the lightning was a hit on its own, we managed to beat it, but I decided it might be better to come to Ua anyway. Izuku continued. Mirio then inquired, so, why did you decline then, but accepted now? Back then, I thought that if I stayed, they would be attacked, however even when I didn't stay, they still got attacked, so I decided to come since it would be safer with so many heroes around, but also to try and protect them, Izuku said with his eyes closed. Well, I gotta say, that's a nice reason to come here, but you also aim to become a hero, don't you? Mirio responded. Yeah, I don't want anyone to feel afraid, or lose a loved one. I want to protect as many people as I can, Izuku said. Then Mirio and Tamaki stood up. Well, thanks for your time and to answer my questions. Sadly we have to go now, but we'll see you later, Mirio said. It was nice talking to you, Izuku. Till next time, he said. As Mirio and Tamaki left, he said, same here, CYA. Nejire blushed slightly as Izuku joked, well, you got me to yourself now, just like you wanted. IEH. Never mind, she said, agitated. Izuku questioned, why did you want to be alone with me anyway? Well, because you were interesting, but also because I had to think quite a bit about you ever since lunch break, so even though I asked you to hang out, I just wanted to be alone with you for a bit, she said. Well, guess we were the same then, I had to think about you as well, Izuku said. Her cute, inquisitive face said, really? Why did you have to think about me though? You're grinning, he said. She asked, a little flustered, what about my smile? Was something wrong with it? Did it look weird? Izuku said it was bright. She questioned, what do you mean? She blushed when Izuku said, you had a really bright smile, but I've only seen darkness for years. Also, you sounded very kind, and it gave me a nice feeling, and I guess you already know, but you're also very pretty, Izuku said. She blushed and said, well, you are quite handsome yourself, you know. Izuku's face remained expressionless. Can I ask you a serious and maybe personal question? She was asking. Izuku said, sure, go ahead. I noticed, you don't really talk that much, and I haven't seen you smile once or show any emotion. What have you been doing before you got into UA? And Mirio might not have thought about it, but I wanted to ask, why were you attacked by villains? She responded with concern and curiosity. I can answer your first question, however that will take some explaining. As for why they attacked me, I don't know, I guess because of my power, but I never understood why they kept targeting me like that, Izuku said. That sounds like it wasn't the first time they attacked you, Nejire said. Izuku said, honestly, I've lost count of the times they attacked me, which caused Nejire to frown. You wanted to know what I've been doing before Ua, right? The short answer is, I've been surviving, Izuku said. But I bet you still want to hear the story behind all of it, don't you? Izuku responded. Yeah, but you don't have to tell me if you don't want to, Nejire replied. It's alright, you don't feel like a bad person, I'll tell you, Izuku said. That villain attack wasn't the first, but it also wasn't the first time I met Aizawa. In fact, I met Aizawa around 8 years ago. I was on the run from some villains. He defeated them, however I kept running. We only saw each other a little bit, Izuku said. Nejire inquired, so you were attacked then too? When I was 7, my mom and I were attacked because of my quirk. Villains wanted this power on their side. My mom shielded me so I got away. Ever since then, being attacked by villains was a daily thing, Izuku said. Wait, so? Nejire began. Yep, I've been fighting villains daily for 9 years total now, Izuku replied. That's insane, but didn't you have somewhere to go? Or someone to go to? Nejire replied. He replied, nope, I was all on my own. That's also the reason I almost never show emotion, and also why I almost never talk out of my own, Izuku said. Nejire inquired, and how did all that make you feel? Izuku was a little taken aback because he never imagined she would ask him that. He inquired, what do you mean? She inquired with some concern, I mean, you've been alone for so long, didn't it feel lonely? Weren't you scared? I actually never really thought about it. I have been alone for years, but I really did feel lonely, and I was really scared, but if I showed it, or accept that feeling, then it would be over. My fear would keep me from acting, and I might have gotten killed because of it, Izuku said. So, instead of losing your emotions, you started to keep it all bottled inside, that way you wouldn't show weakness and could survive that long, Nejire said. Then Izuku experienced some internal uneasiness. What is she doing? Izuku wondered. The place I lived in was very dark and cold, that's why I enjoyed the sun and the weather just now, and that's also why your smile is so bright, Izuku said while getting up. Then Nejire gently took hold of him, put his head on her chest, and gave him a hug. You're not alone anymore, and you're not in that dark cold place anymore. You're at UA now, with classmates, friends. I promise everything will now change for the better, Najire said. Izuku felt warm all of a sudden and started crying. Those emotions are. What did she do to me that was so overwhelming? Izuku pondered while tears fell down his cheeks. This was noted by Najire. That's good, you finally broke down the wall you build to keep yourself, from being human. Najire said. You can let it all out, I'm here for you and I'll stay with you, she said. As more and more tears fell down his cheeks, Izuku said, I guess these feelings are everything I held in for years. They're overwhelming, I felt so afraid, and I felt so alone and sad. I feel so weak right now. It's okay to be weak, it's okay to show emotion. Weakness and emotion can help you get stronger, and don't worry about feeling weak right now. I'm here and I'll protect you when you feel weak, Najire stated. You're horrible, you barely know me, and already you make me cry like this. Honestly, it sucks to feel like this, but on the other side, being held like this is really warm and comforting, Izuku said. I noticed you closed yourself in, just looking at you. I knew you were a kind person. That's why we wanted to know about the fight you had against the villains to protect Class 1A. We wanted to know what made an outside person act to save people. You acted like a hero, and that alone tells us that you care about people. However, from the outside it looked like you didn't care about anything, and I immediately knew. You closed yourself in, she said. As she continued to hold him close, she said, I feel bad for making you cry, but then again, you can't go forward if you're still bottling up the past. For a while, there was silence as Najire held Izuku, and Izuku simply lay against her. A few students passed by and noticed the two, staring at them, but neither Najire nor Izuku noticed. The silence was abruptly broken by Izuku. Najire. Thank you, Izuku said. Thank you? What for? You're allowed to feel emotion, silly, and I just really felt like hugging you. Honestly, I don't know what it is. I've never felt like this before. I just met you, but it just feels like I already care a great deal about you. And then there's the thinking about you in class. Then I suddenly start hugging you like this. I must seem very strange right now, she said. No, that's not true. You're amazing, and very kind. Actually, I have the same as you. And honestly, it feels nice being so close to you, Izuku responded. Najire said, well, I'm glad to hear that. By the way, are you participating in the sports festival? Najire inquired. Sports festival? Not that I know of. I haven't heard anything about that actually, so I don't know, Izuku said. Najire said, shall we ask? Sure, let's go, Najire said with a sense of happiness, not because he said it, but because his voice was softer, more gentle, and more expressive. After walking back to UA, Izuku and Najire proceeded to the teacher's room. He knocked on the door after arriving. He heard the words, come in, spoken. Everyone was staring at Izuku when he opened the door and saw all of the teachers seated there. Hello? Sorry to disturb you, but I had a question, Izuku replied. Aizawa was taken aback and saw the difference in Izuku almost immediately. Although Izuku spoke spontaneously, there was more emotion in his words. Aizawa whispered, what did you want to ask, Izuku? Najire stood behind Izuku, looking curiously at him as he said, well, I was talking with her here, but she asked me if I was entering the sports festival, but I haven't heard anything about it, so I was wondering if I was participating as well. As everyone stared in shock at him, Aizawa said, well, since you just joined, we were actually thinking of not forcing you to participate as we would actually be jumping it on you, but I actually was thinking of asking you if you wanted to or not. Midnight said, that's not really like you, Aizawa. Well, the sports festival is about UA, so by leaving him out he might feel like being left out, and UA shows the promising new students as well. We know that Izuku is amazing, and this will be a chance to show everyone that we've got a strong hero coming as well, explained Aizawa. All might have said, I agree with Aizawa. So Izuku, do you want to participate, or would you rather just watch? Replied Aizawa. Izuku then turned to face Najire, who gave him a radiant smile and a curious, large-eyed expression. Izuku gave her a smile before turning around once more. Everyone was taken aback when the previously emotionless Izuku smiled, but Aizawa was the one who was most taken aback. Izuku gave a confident, I'll participate, statement. Can I ask you, however, not to kill anyone? The sports festival is something different every year, and quirks are allowed to be used, but that power of yours is already terrifyingly strong. Even as a kid, we don't want people to die because of it, Aizawa said. Don't worry about that, even with all those villains after me. I've never killed a person. I defeated weaker villains than the students here, and they all recovered nicely. I've seen them in a few attacks after that as well, Izuku said. Mike said, A little uneasy. Man, you are freaky. How can you talk about that so casually like it's seeing a relative again? After 9 years you get used to it, you start remembering familiar faces. Izuku stated. Also Aizawa, I think I've never properly thanked you, Izuku said. Aizawa said, thank me. What for? 8 years ago, you took care of the villains that were after me. Izuku said. Izuku bowed and said, thank you for saving me that day. As everyone grinned subtly, Aizawa said, don't worry about it, kid. I'm just glad you're still alive and safe. Izuku inquired, so when is this sports festival? Actually, Midnight said in a slightly uneasy tone. It's tomorrow, said Nejire. Oh, well that explains why you wanted to keep me out. Mostly people would be freaked out to hear about joining something big the day after. Izuku replied. Aizawa gave a nod. Also, the hero suit you asked for, it's ready for use. Sadly, you can't use it at the sports festival, but once the time comes, you can use it. I just wanted to tell you that. Aizawa said. Izuku said, awesome, thank you sir. Izuku's suit will look like the image above, except without the hood and the weapons. His shoulders and upper arms will be bare, so there won't be any clothing on them. Additionally, there won't be any buttons or other items near his neck. I'm not sure what the term is for those iron objects next to the neck. After that, Izuku and Nejire left and remained together for a while to continue their conversation until it was getting dark and they had to return to their dorms. Izuku, good luck tomorrow. I'll be cheering you on, Nejire said. Izuku gave him a hug after saying, thanks, Nejire. Despite his hesitation, Izuku gave her a hug in return. She eventually wanted to leave, but Izuku caught hold of her hand and pulled her back a little. When she turned around, he gave her a quick peck on the cheek. Izuku gave her a gentle smile and said, that's for what you did for me today, as well as giving me such a good feeling. With her face flushed and unable to express anything, Nejire simply gazed. She managed to say, no problem, before leaving. Izuku asked himself in silence, was that too much? Then she rushed back and gave him a cheek kiss as well. Before she hurried back to her dorm, Nejire said, I apologize, it wasn't too much, I just didn't expect it. It may seem odd, but I already really like you. Izuku entered his own dorm, got some food, showered, and went to bed early because he was exhausted from the day's events and had to rise early for the sporting event. In order to avoid being late for the sports festival, everyone got up early. After eating breakfast, they all headed to the arena. When they arrived, they saw that many people had already entered and that many pro heroes were waiting as guards. Aizawa said, a little bored, so you guys are finally here. Today is the perfect day for you guys. The whole country will be able to see what you can do, so if you do well here, it might help you get work in the future, said Aizawa. Now let's go inside. All of the first-year classes gathered at the field as Midnight announced that this year's sports festival was finally about to begin, and everyone followed Aizawa inside. She then informed everyone that there would only be 2 events. A race in the first round and a battle in the second round, which would be a tournament-style one-on-one match. When the opponent is incapacitated, unconscious, or outside the ring, you win. Midnight yelled, okay, all students, get ready. As they all moved to a door. Although he was aware that it was being televised, Izuku stood in the back of the stadium and peered around, wondering if Nejire was there to watch him. He didn't see her, though. At UA, all of the classes were seated in their classrooms while UA's sports festival was shown on a large screen. Nejire saw Izuku scanning the area. She thought, pay attention to the festival dummy. As the door opened, she exclaimed, all right, ladies and gentlemen, let the first round of the sports festival begin. Everyone wanted to rush outside as soon as the door opened, but Izuku saw ice approaching him, freezing everyone's legs. As he covered himself in lightning, Izuku said, I guess this is what they meant when they said you're allowed to use quirks. Well, if that's the case. He leapt to his feet before the ice reached him and launched his lightning through the air, then used the shoulders of the students to get past them. After he got past them all, he began to run, his lightning speeding him up even further. Izuku quickly caught up to those who had broken through the ice. He first saw Mineta and Momo, but then a huge robot abruptly slammed Mineta away. Momo continued after evading the robot. Izuku abruptly sprinted past her and then saw Iida and Uraraka. Uraraka had used the quirk on herself rather than her clothing to make herself nearly weightless, which allowed her to keep up with Iida's speed. Izuku said, that's actually pretty incredible, but it's nothing I can't outrun, as he began to run more intently. Izuku then passed Iida and Uraraka, and the gap between them shrank crazily quickly. That can't be, exclaimed Iida in shock, but as they all turned to face the future, they saw a huge abyss. The only way to cross it was to cross ropes above it. Izuku became lightning himself when he got there, and he was able to get over it by zigzagging between the ropes at a breakneck speed. He essentially transformed into lightning himself to zigzag in that manner, but he is unable to make large leaps. He can use it to move in midair, but the distance he covers in one of those jumps isn't very great, and he can also use it to move in midair, but the distance won't be very far. To clarify, he cannot be attacked while making that kind of jump, but he can't attack either. Enjoy reading the rest. Then, to his surprise, Izuku saw Tokiyami and Kirishima standing in front of him. Wow, never expected to see them this far ahead of Iida and Uraraka with the speed they had, Izuku quietly said. Izuku, on the other hand, passed them with ease and saw Bakugo and Todoroki ahead right away. It didn't take him long to catch up, but Bakugo was using his explosions to fly at the same time that Todoroki created a field of ice while sliding over it and using his flames as a booster. As he became serious, Izuku charged his lightning further and sprinted ahead at full speed. Everyone is using their quirks in amazing ways. I'm really impressed, but I'm not going to lose to them, he said. Izuku sped past them with amazing speed. But Izuku didn't hesitate when he saw a minefield after he had passed them. Just moving straight ahead, he pondered. When Bakugo and Todoroki suddenly managed to stay close by, Bakugo used full-force explosions to make himself as fast as possible, and Todoroki used intense flames to boost himself. This brought them close to Izuku's speed, but Izuku managed to get inside first. Izuku actually ran in a straight line and set off some mine explosions, but he was moving too quickly for the explosions to hurt him. And Izuku Midoriya is our number 1, yelled Midnight. At number 2 we have Todoroki who beated the number 3 Katsuki Bakugo by a hair, Midnight yelled. Shortly after, the other 5 students entered the building. Momo, Uraraka, Iida, Kirishima, and Tokiyami. Najire looked with excitement and joy and said, "Good job, Izuku. You were really impressive, and the way you used that lightning to zigzag over the ropes. Ooh, I want to see him again and talk to him more. Well, someone is excited about someone. Guess you felt a spark yesterday, huh?" Mirio said. Tamaki laughed at this, but Najire didn't deny that it made him blush. Mirio smiled smoothly and said, "It must be true, huh, since you aren't denying it." She blushed wildly as she suddenly remembered, I really did start to like him. OMG, we even kissed each other on the cheek. Well, it's a good thing, right? I haven't seen him long, but what I saw from him, he's a good guy, and if you would do a thing like that, that means he really means a lot to you, said Mirio. Then Najire said, "Yeah, but I've only just met him, so, what does that have to do with it? Sometimes you just meet the right person and just know it's that person, and it seems you were the right person for him as well. He looks a lot happier after yesterday, and his emotionless expression is gone, so you really opened him up," Mirio said. With a hint of insecurity, she said, "But, what if he doesn't like me?" "He wouldn't in any way," Tamaki said abruptly. She questioned, "How do you know that for sure?" "Well, if he didn't, he wouldn't have kissed you on the cheek like you just said you guys did. Which means he also likes you, and I'm thinking that at the start when he was looking around, he was searching for you in the audience," Tamaki clarified. She questioned, "You sure? Wow, Najire. I've never seen you this insecure about something or someone. You must really like him. Does he know about it?" Mirio responded. "Well, yesterday, he kissed me on the cheek, and ignored it at first and ran off. However, I quickly came back, kissed him on the cheeks, told him I liked him and ran off," Najire said. Najire put his head on her desk and said, "Man, I was so dumb, but I was afraid he wouldn't feel the same." Mirio said, "Well, you still got plenty of time." The next event would then begin, Midnight announced. The initial games will be Tokiyami vs Izuku, Iida vs Todoroki, Momo vs Uraraka. Kirishima vs Bakugo. Midnight said, "Please come to the field, Izuku and Tokiyami." They both grinned enthusiastically as they made their way to the field. Izuku wished Tokiyami luck. "Same to you," was his response. On the field, they stood opposite one another. With excitement, Midnight said, "Let the battle begin." Tokiyami uttered the words, "Dark Shadow," as the shadow materialized and began to assault Izuku. Izuku pushed Dark Shadow away by charging his lightning around himself. "That lightning is powerful," said Dark Shadow. Tokiyami said, "I know, we'll have to be smart if we want to beat him." Tokiyami then sent Izuku Dark Shadow once more, but Izuku vanished as soon as the Dark Shadow got there. Tokiyami was shocked when Izuku said, "Your quirk is strong but has a big weakness which makes it easy to take you down." Izuku held out his hand and then shocked Tokiyami with lightning, saying, Even though your quirk is strong and good for long range, in close combat you're defenseless. Tokiyami collapsed to the ground. Dark Shadow came back to him in a flash. According to Dark Shadow, let's go, partner. No, he's not an opponent we can win from, we're just wasting our energy. I give up, Tokiyami said. The winner is Izuku, declared Midnight. Smart move, don't get me wrong, Dark Shadow is strong, but by encountering someone who's good at close range, you lose. Dark Shadow is good at long range, but maybe you can find a way to use it for both close and long ranged at once, Izuku said. Tokiyami said, thanks, I'll definitely think of a way to do so. Midnight exclaimed, what lovely rivalry, first they fight, now Izuku is encouraging Tokiyami to get stronger, as the crowd applauded. Iida briefly outran Todoroki with his engine during the subsequent battles, but Todoroki ultimately prevailed after freezing Iida's engines in his calf muscles. At first, Momo had the advantage over Uraraka because she had developed long-range weapons and a shield to keep Uraraka at bay. However, Uraraka was able to get past the weapons and shields, render Momo weightless, throw her off the field, and unleash her quirk. Bakugo and Kirishima were fairly one-sided. Bakugo was constantly hurling explosions, and Kirishima was only able to block his blows for so long before Bakugo put his hand on Kirishima's chest and blew him off the field. The longer he blocked, the softer his skin became. Now let's hear it for the half finalists. First, we'll see Izuku and Todoroki fighting for a place in the finals. This is sure to be an exciting battle for sure. Midnight yelled as everyone chanted. Both Izuku and Todoroki ascended the stage, but Todoroki appeared extremely serious, more like irritated or annoyed. Todoroki declared, I will beat you, and I'll do it with only my left side. Izuku also asked, a little annoyed, only your right side? So only your ice? Why's that? I refuse to fight using my old man's quirk, Todoroki declared. You used it in the race, didn't you? So what's the big deal? Izuku responded. I refuse to be his puppet and let him manipulate me. I'll win without his quirk and show him that I won't need his quirk, Todoroki said. Then Izuku made a bow of lightning. Fine, as long as you do that, I'll only fight using this bow. Izuku replied. Stop making fun of me, Todoroki yelled. You are actually mocking me, but rest assured, this bow will be enough for someone who doesn't take this seriously, Izuku said. Midnight yelled, already ladies and gentlemen, let the first half finale match begin, as Todoroki launched a glacier at Izuku right away. Izuku uttered the words, lightning arrow explosive shot. As he fired the arrow, which exploded as it struck the ice, destroying the entire glacier. Would you look at that? Izuku destroyed that entire glacier with just a lightning arrow, incredible, Midnight yelled. Then Todoroki used it to glide around the stage, creating ice beneath his feet. Izuku didn't even use lightning to strengthen his body, he just used his bow and remained standing. Then Todoroki flew through Izuku at a breakneck pace. Izuku pointed his bow at the sky and said, this is getting boring really quirk. Lightning rain, he said, launching a lightning arrow into the air before several lightning strikes descended upon the field. Todoroki fell to the ground as a result of the ice breaking apart in a lightning strike that struck him directly at his feet. You know, you really have a lot of talent, and your quirk is really strong, but I just can't understand you, Izuku said. Why is that? Asked Todoroki. The more you use your ice, the slower your body and reaction time get, otherwise you could have dodged that blow easily, your fire can regulate that. However you don't use it. Izuku continued with his bow in hand. I won't use my flames, my old man. He only wants to use me, he was never good enough to become the number one or to beat All Might. Now he wants me to do it in his place. He only needs my power to defeat All Might. He even resorts to AW-full things to train me. I refuse to be his puppet, so I refuse to use his power. Todoroki clarified. You know, for a talented and smart kid, you really are talking dumb right now, Izuku said. With anger, Todoroki questioned, what do you mean? I don't know what methods he uses, and even though you told me about why he needs you, I still don't understand what that has to do with you, Izuku said. You were born with your quirk half hot half cold, he was born with the quirk Hellflame. Sure your flames come from his genes, but then again, you have your own quirk and he has his own quirk, Izuku said in amazement to Todoroki. As his bow vanished and lightning struck his body, Izuku said, you're old enough to choose your own path. You can do whatever you choose to do. If you want to reach the number one spot, then do it your own way, but don't go disgracing others by saying you'll beat us with half power. If you still insist on holding back your flames, then your fight will end right here, right now. I won't be holding back any longer. You stated you'll beat us with only your ice, Do you even know how pathetic you sound right now? Izuku yelled. They were audible to the crowd and everyone watching the fight. We're not that weak that we'll be beaten with half power. You got some lucky wins but that's all. If you really think your ice will be enough then you are heavily underestimating us. And if you're that scared of using all of your power, then that makes you the weakest of us all. Izuku said as the lightning grew stronger around him. Todoroki stepped back, looking shocked. Tell me, will you face me with all of your power? Or will you forfeit this match? Izuku demanded. According to Todoroki, I won't forfeit. Fine, will you fight me at full power, or will you fight like you have and lose like the weakling you are right now? Izuku responded. Todoroki's gaze lowered. Izuku closed his eyes and said, Tish, such a waste of talent. You're so obsessed with your father that you don't even understand that your flames are your own quirk. Todoroki had had enough after hearing all of that, and then he saw massive flames suddenly shoot up his left side. Izuku grinned confidently as he opened his eyes. The statement, about time you took me seriously, was made by Izuku. Who isn't taking this fight seriously now? Provoking your opponent to use full power. Stop fooling around, Todoroki said with a grin. Izuku said, well, let's see just how strong you are then, as a stream of lightning struck him from above and smashed into the ground. Todoroki shot back, retaliating with his own flames. A huge explosion was produced by the collision. Then, Izuku threw several streams of lightning straight at Todoroki, who blocked it with an ice wall. Todoroki instantly turned to his flames and continued to shoot at Izuku. Then, as it gathered in front of him, Izuku charged lightning from every part of his body to form a shield that would keep the flames out. As they witnessed their powers clashing and heavy attacks being used one after the other, the crowd cheered. Todoroki looked at Izuku and said, well, it looks like the crowd is having fun. Todoroki said, but you look like you're having a great time over there. Izuku smiled and said, well, don't you feel the same? Fighting at full power feels amazing, to be completely honest, Todoroki said. Shooto, declared Endeavor abruptly. As Todoroki hurled flames in Endeavor's direction, Endeavor yelled, have you finally realized you need my power to become stronger? Now show those weaklings just how powerful you are and how pathetic they are. He offset the flames with his own, and then a powerful lightning strike struck just an inch from Endeavor. Undoubtedly, Endeavor was taken aback by the unexpected flash of lightning. Will you shut up already? I don't need you or your power, I'm fighting with my own power, and from now on I use my power how I want to use it, Todoroki said. As Endeavor leapt to the ground and landed his flames, he exclaimed, you arrogant little brat. Midnight said, Endeavor, calm down, as she approached him. After that, Endeavor threw some flames at her to get her to retreat, but Izuku blocked the lightning by shooting his own in front of her. Midnight, it's okay, Izuku said. We'll take care of this, Izuku said. Endeavor asked angrily, oh, and what will you handle now? Endeavor said, what can weaklings like you two do against absolute power? Coming from the number 2, seems your absolute power isn't as great as you brag about, Izuku said. As his flames intensified, Endeavor said, you're quite arrogant for a kid, let me show you what real power looks like. Izuku observed the instructors sprinting in the direction of the field. As the teachers came to a halt, Izuku said, don't worry about me, I can handle this myself. As his lightning got stronger, Izuku said, Todoroki, please step aside for a moment. We'll start fighting again soon. Then, as Todoroki retreated beside the teachers, Endeavor strode up the field. Well, who would have expected this? A fight between Izuku Midoriya and the number 2 hero, Midnight yelled. Everyone at UA was taken aback. Well, he sure has guts. First he makes that Todoroki kid use full power, now he's even facing the number 2 inches, said Tamaki. I don't know if it was a good idea to provoke Endeavor though. Mirio said. We know he's strong, and that he has talent. We all saw that already, however fighting a pro from the top 10? That might be a bit too much for him, Mirio said. Izuku's got this, Nijire said in a calm, soft voice. Tamaki questioned, you seem to have confidence in his power, do you know something we don't? But Nijire continued to stare at the screen. Endeavor yelled angrily, get ready to lose, kid, as he hurled fierce flames at Izuku. Izuku's lightning created lightning bars to put out the flames, shooting up and then down toward the ground. Endeavor then launched several flame moves, but Izuku was able to block each one. Izuku sighed and said, honestly, I expected more, even if you're just the number 2. Are you holding back on me or is this really all you have? Izuku asked, surprised. Mike said, a little alarmed, is he trying to provoke him? If he does then it works. Just the number 2 huh, I've heard enough of you. was the Endeavor's statement as a massive flame erupted throughout the surrounding atmosphere. "Prominence burn," he exclaimed, stoking his flames to their maximum intensity. As Cementos prepared to remove Aizawa's peculiarity, Midnight exclaimed, "He's going too far." But then they noticed Izuku laughing. When he saw it, All Might exclaimed, "Is he really laughing?" Izuku yelled, "Raging Volt," as he directed a beam of lightning-like energy at the flames. The attacks collided, resulting in a tremendously potent air pressure clash. Endeavor's power gradually began to be overpowered by Izuku's move. Izuku's attack gradually blew through Effort's attack and collided with him. Endeavor fell to the ground outside the battleground after being electrified and sent flying. After a brief period of silence, the audience began to cheer loudly. After Izuku reached the edge, there was silence once more. "So much for your absolute power. In terms of raw power, you really have more strength than most of the pros and you really are close to All Might. However, there is more than brute strength to being strong and beating an opponent. Sure, it helps against a lot of villains, but just like you saw, there can always be someone overpowering you," Izuku clarified. "What you displayed just now is a joke. A really strong person doesn't just boast about his strength. Someone who's really powerful will use his power accordingly to create an opening and then strike, not like you did trying to overpower someone head-on. Raw power doesn't make you invincible. It's sad that you don't even understand that. By accepting his power, Todoroki has already far surpassed you. Not only does he have strong attacks, he uses them to try and create openings, and he uses them as a tactic, not just to overpower someone," Izuku said as he was listening to everything and then left angry. Izuku relaxed and wiped some perspiration from his brow after taking a deep breath and exhaling. "You ready to continue this fight, Todoroki?" Izuku asked, calmly but a little exhausted. "Sure, but instead of a dragged-out fight, how about we settle this in one attack? You seem pretty worn out after fighting my old man." Todoroki sighed. As Todoroki re-entered the stage, Izuku said, "Fine by me." Now, after a spectacular fight between Izuku and the number 2 Endeavor, the fight between Izuku and Todoroki continues. However, they stated they will finish it in one last attack, Midnight said. Then, as a large ball of lightning was forming, Izuku put his hands together. Astonished, Todoroki questioned, "Man, just how much power do you have?" Then he charged his left side with fierce flames. "I won't be able to control my flames much since I haven't used them much, but then again, if I don't give it everything right here and now, I won't be able to beat you," Todoroki said. Izuku uttered the words, "Lightning Bolt," as he hurled his ball of lightning at Todoroki, who raised his arm and stoked his flames with all of his strength. When the flames and lightning bolt collided, a massive explosion and smokescreen were produced. The smokescreen eventually cleared, and Izuku was the first person to be seen. He blocked his face by holding his arms in front of him in the shape of a cross, and there were some marks on the ground where he had been slightly pushed back by the force. Todoroki eventually appeared as well, standing at the field's edge and panting heavily. The shirt was totally burned off the left side of his body. Todoroki said, "You really are a monster," as he collapsed onto his back from the stage. "Izuku Midoriya is the winner of this match," yelled Midnight. The audience gave a wild cheer. Izuku was actually panting a little as he left the stage. "You've USEDD more power than you thought, haven't you?" replied Aizawa. "Well, that's what I get for provoking the number 2 hero. He wasn't weak, just too arrogant, and too uphold on raw strength," Izuku said. As Izuku nodded and moved to where his entire class was seated to watch, Aizawa said, "Take a nice rest, you deserve it." Momo said, "Wow, Izuku, you truly were amazing." Kirishima said, "Yeah man, that was so manly. Thanks guys," Izuku said, finally taking a seat and taking a short break. When he came upstairs, the match between Bakugo and Uraraka had begun. Uraraka tried to avoid Bakugo's explosions by staying low to the ground, but Bakugo remained stationary and kept a close eye on her. When she approached too closely, he used a large, far-reaching explosion to blow her away. She came very close on a few occasions, but ultimately she passed out from exhausting all of her energy and from the damage caused by the explosions. In order to allow everyone attending the sports festival to stretch their muscles or get some refreshments and snacks, Bakugo and Izuku were given 30 minutes to recover from their altercations. All of the fans had taken their seats by the end of the half, but Izuku and Bakugo were already on the field, standing across from one another, and they were simply staring at each other intently. "Alright ladies and gentlemen, now what you've all been waiting for. The final match, Izuku Midoriya vs Katsuki Bakugo. Who will win this battle and get first place?" Midnight yelled as everyone chanted. Bakugo raised his hand to produce tiny explosions, and Izuku used his body to channel his lightning, which occasionally swirled around him. Midnight yelled, "Ready! Begin!" And just as she did, Bakugo and Izuku both leapt forward at breakneck speed. They both raised their arms to each other as Bakugo detonated his explosion and Izuku shot lightning. Midnight exclaimed, "A clash of power right from the start. Incredible!" The force of the collision pushed both Bakugo and Izuku back, and both of them smiled as they fought. Then Bakugo launched himself at Izuku, attempting to blast him in the face, but Izuku deflected it with lightning-covered arms. After that, Izuku touched Bakugo's chest. "Thunderclap," Izuku said as Bakugo was flung aside and lightning struck his body, seriously injuring him. Bakugo immediately shot back at Izuku, using his explosions to prevent himself from falling off the field. "Die," he yelled, causing a quick burst of explosions. In order to counteract the rapid fire, Izuku held out his hands and shot lightning from them. However, the clashes ensured that Izuku no longer saw Bakugo, as Bakugo abruptly emerged from the smoke from his side as Izuku was struck in the side by an explosion. Bakugo then grabbed Izuku's face and slammed him into the ground. But instead of attempting to escape, Izuku grinned. Izuku grabbed Bakugo's wrist as he attempted to pull back, his eyes wide. "Dragon Thunder," he said as Bakugo was struck by lightning. Izuku then let go of Bakugo and kicked him away with lightning as he screamed in agony. Then Izuku leapt backward a few paces. They were both breathing heavily. Bakugo said, "Well, now, seems you don't have endless stamina." "Well, I've fought quite a lot those past years, but never against so many powerful opponents, our classmates, Todoroki, you're all strong heroes, so there is no way I wouldn't get tired from fighting you. And besides I had to overpower the number 2, that's not child's play, you know," Izuku said with a sigh. Bakugo leapt into the air and said, "Well then, since you're so tired, I'll end it right here and let you rest." Izuku charged his lightning, placing his hands on the ground like a track runner. Then Bakugo spun around and was shot down, followed by explosions. He yelled, "Howitzer impact!" Izuku spun around, covered in lightning, and held out his fist, launching himself from the floor directly at Bakugo. Izuku exclaimed, "Raging Thunder Drill," as the lightning continued to get stronger. Their attacks eventually collided, producing a smokescreen and an incredibly large explosion. "Incredible, 2 of our first-year students were powerful enough to create an amazingly huge explosion and smokescreen like this," said Midnight. Izuku was lying on the field as the smoke gradually cleared, and when it had, they saw Bakugo wedged into a wall. "Wow, both fighters are down. Bakugo is stuck on a wall, and Izuku seems to be down as well," said Midnight. Izuku began to get up abruptly as intense lightning continued to strike his body, and Midnight explained, "If Izuku is still conscious and able to stand, then it means he wins, but if this is not the case, then this fight will be a drive." Izuku stood up on both legs after a few seconds, and the audience let out a wild cheer. "Izuku Midoriya is this year's sports festival winner," yelled Midnight. Everyone got to their feet and applauded loudly, including the students in Class 1A. Even Mirio, Tamaki, and Najire were at UA, applauding Izuku's triumph. The award ceremony then started, with Izuku receiving the medal for first place, Bakugo coming in second, Todoroki and Uraraka sharing third, and everyone cheering loudly for their valiant efforts. Izuku became a little unsteady on his feet after everything was over and Class 1A began to return to UA. Kirishima and Kaminari helped him walk. "Thanks guys. Fighting so many strong people today really took it out of me," Izuku said. "Don't worry about it, we're friends, right?" Kaminari said, grinning. When they got to Ua, Mirio, Tamaki, and Najire were waiting at the doorway, and Izuku saw them. They were pleased to see him, but they became concerned when they saw Kirishima and Kaminari essentially carrying him. "Are you okay?" Mirio inquired. "Yeah, but it was really exhausting fighting Tokiyami, Todoroki, Endeavor, and Bakugo," Izuku said, grinning. "It's okay guys, I can walk now, thanks for the help," he said, standing alone. "No problem bro, we'll see you at the dorm later," Kirishima said as he and Kaminari made their way back to the dorm. While the rest of Class 1A had already returned, Kirishima, Izuku, and Kaminari walked a little more slowly, with Izuku looking particularly exhausted. "What did you think?" Izuku smiled and said, "You were amazing." Najire smiled softly and looked at him with a dreamy smile and a look in her eyes, and Izuku smiled back at her. "Honestly, I was a bit worried when you faced Endeavor, but man, you're strong," Mirio said. "Well, overpowering him wasn't easy, it took a lot of power. Guess that's why I'm so tired right now," Izuku replied. Tamaki said, you should really rest though. Izuku said, well, we won't hold you back man, you did amazing. Say, once you wake up, do you want to hang out a bit? Yeah. I just saw you guys and wanted to talk a bit, but yeah, I was planning on taking a little nap to restore some energy when I got back. In response to Mirio's question, sure, I'd love to. Izuku gave Mirio his phone number so they could communicate whenever they wanted and so Izuku could notify him when he was awake. As he felt his energy ebbing away, Izuku said, my phone is still in my room, you can send me a message, I'll tell you when I'm awake again. Well, have a nice rest and nap man, see you later, Mirio said. Oh that reminds me, Izuku said as he stopped his walk to his dorm. He then turned to face Nejire, and Mirio and Tamaki gave him a startled and interested look. Yesterday before leaving you told me something, I haven't been able to answer you then since you were away so quick, Izuku said. As Mirio and Tamaki both looked surprised with wide eyes, Izuku abruptly leaned towards her and kissed her on the lips while Nejire was still considering what he meant. I like you too, Izuku said, smiling and closing his eyes. As retaliation for the previous day, he then used his lightning to shoot her away before she could react, but Nejire was only muttering some inaudible words while flushed. She couldn't have blushed any more than she was at the moment. Mirio and Tamaki simply grinned at the muttering, flushed mess that was Nejire at the moment. After arriving at the dorm, Izuku showered and went to bed. Upon opening his phone in his room, he discovered that Mirio had already sent him a message. Hey Mirio here, this way you'll have my number as well, take a nice rest. Izuku grinned and read the second message, which read, you did a good job with Nejire, she really liked you and was unsure if you felt the same way about her. Now she knows for sure you like her too, and she's been a blushing mess and stuttering mess ever since you left. Well, have a nice rest and we'll see you later. Izuku smiled as he fell onto his bed and closed his eyes. He saw Nejire in front of him before he fell asleep, and he looked at her lovely face and eyes. She also had long blue hair, but what he liked best about her and what he saw last before he fell asleep was her breathtakingly gorgeous bright smile. After a few hours of sleep, Izuku woke up and messaged Mirio to let him know that he was awake once more. A minute later, he got a message inviting him to meet in the park. Izuku accepted it, then proceeded to the park and, with his eyes closed and a smile on his face, lay down in the grass in the sun. He heard them approaching a short while later. Mirio said, hey Izuku, had a good rest? Izuku sat up and stretched his arms and back, saying, yeah, it was a really nice nap. Izuku then noticed that Nejire was staring at him. She blushed once more when he turned to face her and grinned. According to Tamaki, I think you kind of melted her brain. When he got up and approached Nejire, Izuku said, you really think so? She nodded, and Izuku said, are you still in there? Izuku smiled and sat back down, saying, ah good. How is he able to act so naturally composed? As she sat down, Nejire thought, it was already difficult for me to say that I like him, but he just did it and even kissed me, and now he's acting as if nothing changed. Tamaki and Mirio sat on the grass as well. Tamaki inquired, so Izuku, how was it? Fighting the number 2 hero? Mirio appeared taken aback by him. Tamaki said, hey, you know, I can be curious too. Mirio said, yeah, but you're generally really shy. He responded, I don't spend enough time with friends or people I know. To answer that question, it was really tough. I overpowered him sure, but he's very strong. The thing about him is, he only attacks head-on, he doesn't create an opening for himself, he just charges in at full power and just hopes his attacks get through. Izuku responded. Basically if I fought like I normally do, he wouldn't stand a chance. My fighting style mostly uses my speed to create openings then attack, it's a better strategy than attacking head-on, Izuku said. Curious, Izuku asked, by the way, what are your quirks? My quirk is called Manifest. I can manifest things I ate. I mostly eat takoyaki and clams. That way I've always got good offense and defense on hand. I can only manifest what I ate that day though, Tamaki said. My quirk is permeation. It's not that grand as Tamaki's quirk, however I'm able to slip through matter. I can even slip through the ground and launch myself up by undoing my quirk underground. However there are a lot of different steps involved in going through something. However I trained it so much I can almost do it naturally, Mirio said. What about you Nejire? Izuku asked, but she continued to blush while looking at him. With a silly smile, Mirio said, perhaps you should kiss her again. Then Nejire jolted back to the present. She looked at Izuku and asked, still flushed, sorry what? Glad you're back. I was asking about your quirks. Mirio and Tamaki already explained theirs. I was wondering what yours was. Izuku said. Mine is called Surge. I use my own energy to shoot energy blasts. I can also make myself float and bind people with it, she clarified. Izuku said, wow, you three really have amazing quirks. Well, that might be. However, yours is the most impressive, said Mirio. Tamaki exclaimed, yeah, you're really strong. Well, that's what I wanted, to be strong and to protect others, not that I had any choice to become stronger or not, Izuku said. Mirio saw that Izuku was a little depressed and asked, what do you mean? Right, you guys left before Nejire and I talked about that. That villain attack I talked about, that launched my into UA, that wasn't the first, I actually lost count of how many attacks I've fended off, Izuku said. Tamaki inquired, how long have you been attacked by villains then? Every day for 9 years straight, was what Izuku said, and Mirio and Tamaki's eyes widened. Wow, that's intense, didn't you have anywhere to go? Mirio responded. Nope, my mom shielded me to get away when I was 7, however I've never seen her since, I don't know if she got away, or if she was taken, or maybe even killed, Izuku said. It's really rough, said Tamaki. Yeah, well, I managed to survive, and I'll become a hero, so I can save others, so kids won't have to lose their parents or parents don't have to lose their child, so people won't lose their loved ones to villain attacks, and most of all to save people from the life I had, Izuku said. After hearing that, Nejire appeared depressed as well, and she suddenly recalled earlier. I'm sorry to suddenly change the subject, but Izuku, how is it you were able to say you like me and kiss me so easily? It took all my courage I had to say I like you, then I ran away, but you were able to tell me you liked me with a smile on your face and even kiss me before leaving, Nejire said. It's not that it was easy for me, trust me, my heart raced like crazy, but I've spent years trying to stay calm no matter how I felt, so I guess that's something that stayed with me, Izuku said. As he scratched his head and laughed a little awkwardly, Izuku said, I apologize for the unexpected kiss, I shouldn't have done that. Then Nejire bent over and gave him a kiss. Izuku, Tamaki, and Mirio all appeared startled, and Nejire, the blushing mess who was muttering, kissed Izuku out of the blue. She said, flushed, that's my way of showing I like you just as much, and also for showing I don't mind kissing you. Mirio said, she'll melt her brain soon, and they all burst out laughing. Say, shall we go to the shopping mall in the city? We could grab some food and something to drink? Said Mirio. Izuku said, fine by me, and Mirio leapt to his feet. Following his example, the others stood up as well. They headed for the mall, but as soon as they arrived, Nejire dragged everyone into a clothing store, and Mirio regretted asking. Izuku, Mirio, and Tamaki waited while Nejire went for a while to get clothes. Izuku questioned, so, why did we have to come in here too? Once Nejire gets here, she wants us to rate her clothes and tell her our opinion on it. It's just the amount of clothes she gets just to try them on is huge, Mirio said. Nejire abruptly appeared on foot, her arms entirely encased in a heap of clothing. Izuku's eyes were wide. I get you too since you're her friends, but why me? Izuku responded. Mirio laughed and said, you two literally kissed before we got here, do you even have to ask? As Nejire walked with 3 bags of clothing, they finally finished rating her outfits after a very long time. Thanks you guys, said Nejire. Should we get something to eat? I'm starving and it's on me, Izuku said, while Mirio, Tamaki, and Izuku simply nodded. Mirio said, that's nice, but you don't have to man. Izuku grinned and said, well, it's still on me, let's just say it's celebrating that I won the sports festival. Mirio grinned and said, well, if you say it like that, then it'll be rude to decline. They all ordered food and drinks at the restaurant, and when they were finished, Izuku paid the bill and they all left. Mirio stretched his arms and back and said, man, that food was so delicious. Tamaki said, you said it that was really good. Nejire said, yeah, thanks for the food Izuku. No problem, I went here when I was a kid and it's still delicious, Izuku replied. They continued to walk through the mall, Izuku and Nejire behind them and Mirio and Tamaki in front. Izuku took her hand without thinking and they walked hand in hand. Mirio and Tamaki were not particularly aware of it, but even if they were, they didn't care because they were friends with both Izuku and Nejire, and as long as they were content, so were they. While Izuku, Nejire, Mirio, and Tamaki were out and about, a massive explosion erupted nearby. Izuku immediately ran in its direction, and Mirio, Tamaki, and Nejire soon followed. However, they discovered 4 Nomu savagely tearing through the city. They slammed into buildings, through cars, and attacked anyone they saw. Izuku witnessed a few local heroes battle the Nomu, but they were unable to defeat them. Izuku attracted the attention of the 4 Nomu by launching lightning at them. Izuku said to his friends, go help with the rescue, I can handle them. They nodded and immediately sprinted to the destroyed and burning buildings to check if anyone was in need. Izuku said to the local heroes who attempted to confront the Nomus, "You go as well." One of them exclaimed, "Are you sure?" "They are really strong," Izuku said. "Don't worry, I got this." The Nomus abruptly became serious when two of them vanished. Izuku jumped back, looking surprised. The two Nomus punched a tiny hole in the ground after he finished. As the other two Nomu charged at him from the sides, Izuku said, "So those two are speed times, that means that those other two are power types." Izuku stops them by catching their fists. People in the Nomu believed that Izuku was helpless when the two speed types leapt up and launched themselves at him. Izuku turned to the Nomu on his left and roasted it with his lighting after grabbing the Nomu on his right with a tighter fist and slamming it into the other two. He then threw them away. "Wow, amazing," exclaimed one of the local heroes. Izuku and the other three Nomu were engaged in combat. He was about to win when he was able to block their blows and then launch attacks on his own. "Watch out!" exclaimed Nejire. When Izuku turned around, he was brandishing a sword. "I won't make it in time. Shit!" Izuku pondered as the sword abruptly became blocked. When Izuku saw Tamaki with a clam, he turned to look for the cause. "Good thing I always eat takoyaki and clams to have this power," Tamaki said. Izuku was then backed by Mirio and Nejire. Izuku said, "Thanks for the save, guys." Tamaki said, "Don't mention it." Izuku charged at the person brandishing the sword and declared, "You guys handle those Nomus, I'll fight this guy." But the sword user fled when Izuku charged at him. Izuku pursued him. "Wait, stop, Izuku," said Mirio. "Why, he's getting away," exclaimed Izuku. Mirio exclaimed, "You don't get it. That's the hero killer Stain." Izuku ran after him and exclaimed, "Then all the more reason to get him." Izuku charged his lightning a little bit around Stain's body because he was using a sword, so the sword should serve as a lightning rod so he can determine whether Stain is nearby. Izuku was running when the lightning suddenly struck his left, and he was just in time to jump back before a sword appeared and attempted to stab or slash him. That was pretty close, Izuku reflected. After landing, he launched an attack. But the hero he killed was on the run once more. Izuku followed him after jumping on a roof. Izuku then sealed off his path by shooting bars of lightning directly in front of Stain, creating his lightning bow. Then Izuku came down behind him. "I didn't know that the hero killer was such a coward, attacking people in the back then running away," Izuku said. Stain said, "You've got a pretty big mouth for a kid." Then, as Stain prepared his swords, Izuku assumed a fighting stance. Izuku began by hurling lightning at him, but Stain ducked and sprinted in Izuku's direction. When Stain threw some daggers, Izuku used his lightning to deflect them. He then formed lightning claws on his hands and engaged Stain's swords in combat. Stain remarked, "Not bad, for a kid you know how to handle a fight. You're not bad yourself, being able to keep up with me fast attacks," Izuku said. They both unleashed a sudden barrage, with Izuku using his claws to counter Stain's sword-wielding barrage. Unexpectedly, Izuku kicked Stain away after covering his arms in lightning. A few paces away, Stain was kicked. "That's odd. If he was going to kick me, why did he cover his arms with lightning?" Stain pondered. Then Stain leapt to his feet and attempted to cut Izuku from above, but he blocked the swords with his arm. Then Izuku swiftly retaliated by touching Stain. "Thunderclap," he said, releasing his swords as Stain flung himself backwards due to the assault. "I see, using an electric shock throughout my body to make my muscles numb, pretty smart. It wouldn't work quite as good on people with long-ranged quirks, however it works extremely well on people who hold weapons," Stain laughed. After regaining some muscle control, Stain ran at Izuku with two knives in hand. Instead of using his claws, he made lightning daggers and engaged Stain in combat. Stain continued to focus on the dagger after Izuku threw it at him, but as soon as he turned back to face Izuku, Izuku vanished. Then Izuku came up behind Stain and gave him a powerful punch to the face. He launched Stain into the air, landing him beside his swords. He sprang to his feet, snatched them up, and leapt for Izuku. Izuku put a hand on the ground and bent through his knees. He leapt up with amazing speed as lightning whirled around his body, and before Stain could even move, he punched him in the gut. Stain was thrown back, coughing up blood from the punch. Izuku sprinted after the flying body of Stain, his lightning leaping to the roof. When he saw the battlefield where he had battled the Nomu, he leapt for Stain and kicked him in the head, sending him flying into the fray. When something suddenly crashed behind Mirio, Tamaki, and Nejire, they were holding off the Nomus fairly well. They were able to get good hits in and weakened the three Nomus a lot. As soon as they turned around, they saw that it was Stain, the hero killer. He was unconscious and had some pretty severe wounds. Izuku inquired, "How are you guys holding up here?" Pointing to the hero killer, Tamaki questioned, "Did you do that?" "Yeah." "Why?" inquired Izuku. Tamaki turned back to the Nomu and said, "I'm never going to make you angry." Izuku said, "Tamaki, Najire, can you bind On for me?" Then, using his tentacle fingers, Tamaki was able to seize one, and Najire also bound it with her special ability. Izuku rushed in its direction and touched the Nomu's head. He said, "Thunderclap," as the Nomu fell to the ground. When Mirio asked, "What did you do?" "My thunderclap makes the body numb. If I hit the nerves, I can shut those down, but now I used it on its brain so it should be knocked out," Izuku said. The rest of the Nomu suddenly charged at Izuku from the sides. Using his quirk, he grabbed their fists. He exclaimed, "Lightning bind," as lightning swirled around the two Nomu, holding them in place. As they nodded, Izuku said, "Mirio, Tamaki, you hit one. Najire, you defeat the other with your quirk." Tamaki formed a crab hammer in his left hand as he and Mirio slammed the other Nomu with full force after Najire charged her energy beams with full power and shot them at the Nomu. Both Nomu dropped to the floor. Since everyone had been spared, the firefighters' only option was to put out the fire. The police chief arrived in the interim. The police chief said, "I'm glad you guys helped us. You really saved us and a lot of lives." As Izuku put it, "No problem. However, you young man, you're a first year at UA. I don't think you have your license, do you?" The commander replied, "I don't, actually," Izuku said. "Well, officially I'd have to punish you since you actually didn't have the authority to harm the Nomus or the hero killer. However, seeing how you saved so many people, and that your friends are third years with licenses, I'm willing to overlook it for this once. However, I strongly recommend you to get your license if you want to help like this again," said the chief. Izuku bowed and said, "I will, sir. Thank you for not seeing this one. I'll make sure to get my license before acting again." After learning of the incident from the police, Aizawa immediately approached Izuku and his companions as they made their way back to Ua. Izuku said, "Ah, Aizawa, I really wanted to go see you." "Yeah, I figured. The police just called us with details on what happened. I guess you want to get your license, don't you?" replied Aizawa. "I do. I almost got in trouble today, so I really need to go for my license. Is that possible as a first-year student?" Izuku responded. "It is, but it will be difficult, and you'll go through a hell before I let you go on the exam. Do you still think you're up for it?" replied Aizawa. "I do. I will get my license, and I'll train as hard as I have to for it," Izuku said. "Nezu and I already talked about it. The license exam will be over a few months. Until then we'll work you to the bone. Eventually we'll take an exam as a class. If you pass we'll let you go on the license exam. If you fail, you won't. Do you understand?" replied Aizawa. Izuku said with assurance, "Yes sir, I'm fine with it, I'll do my best. Also, earlier when everyone was getting back from the sports festival, I saw you and Najire kissing," Aizawa said with seriousness. Izuku and Najire thought they were in trouble. "We don't mind relationships, as long as it doesn't badly affect your grades or you hero work, so don't worry, you're not in trouble," Aizawa said with a slight grin. Najire and Izuku exhaled in relief. After that, Aizawa left. "Your entire class will train for the exam, and the training starts tomorrow," Aizawa said. Mirio said, "Well, it looks like you've got your work cut out for you, Izuku. Good luck, man." Tamaki nodded. "Thanks guys," said Izuku. Najire approached Izuku and gave him a hug. She said, "Good luck, I know you'll be able to get it." Izuku gave her a hug in return. They exchanged a smile and a kiss after ending the embrace, and then they all headed to their separate dorms. "A few months of hellish training and an exam to get ready for the license exam. I will get my license and become a hero. Then I'll be able to really save people." A few months had gone by, and Izuku and his class were in the last week before the exam to determine who would take the license exam. Izuku and everyone else had undergone aggressive training that nearly caused them to pass, not only to improve their ability to use their quirks but also to receive rescue training and other things. Izuku and his class had begun developing a final technique in the final week before the test. Remember, it doesn't have to be an offensive move, it can also be a capture move, or a defensive move, Aizawa said. "What about me, Aizawa? I already have quite a few moves ready. I can bind and I can defend with my lightning as well as fight of course," Izuku replied. That's true, maybe try to concentrate on improving those moves, or you can try and come up with another move," Aizawa said. Everyone was getting better very fast, and their super moves were also pretty good. After Izuku eventually mastered a move in a day, Aizawa chose to give him the remainder of the week off from training so he could develop super moves. He finished 2 hours ahead of the others. Izuku took advantage of the quiet time to relax. He reclined on the grass in the park. Can't believe I've really been attacked for 9 years straight. It seems like a bad dream seeing how everything is now, Izuku said. Izuku opened his eyes and heard, well, at least you've got a better life now, right? He noticed Nejire grinning at him. You're right, and you know, I met this awesome girl as well, said Izuku. Nejire pouted and said, oh really? With a hint of jealousy, she inquired, what did she look like? Izuku got to his feet. Let's see, long blue hair, beautiful eyes, not to be rude but she has a very nice figure, and to top it off, she has the most amazing smile I've seen, Izuku said. Nejire joked, that sounds a lot like me. As he kissed her, Izuku said, who knows, maybe it is. She gave him a bright smile and said, nope, it's definitely me. I'm glad I met you, otherwise it might have still been very dark and cold around me, Izuku said. Well, I'm lucky to have such an amazing guy like you, Nejire replied. By the way, how did the training go? We hadn't seen you for a while. I heard Mirio texted you a while back and told us you were really tired and really worked to the bone, Nejire said. As he grew weary of the training, Izuku said, well, I'd like to have your number so I can text you as well, and yeah, Aizawa really worked us till we collapsed. But why aren't you training now? You should have school for at least 2 more hours, and I can give you my number but that's going to cost you a warm hug and another kiss, Nejire quipped. Izuku gave her a tender kiss after giving her a tight hug. Then she gave her number to him. I actually had class, but this last week we're training on super moves. I mastered a new one already, however since I already had a few, Aizawa told me I was allowed to do whatever I wanted whenever we had to train, so for this week, I'm done 2 hours earlier than usual, Izuku said. Nejire exclaimed, so what's this new technique you made? Izuku laughed uncomfortably and said, actually, it's not a new move I can show just like that. It's a bit too aggressive for that. I can also bind people already with my lightning bow, and also without, so yeah, and I can defend with my lightning as well. So I've got almost all of that covered I guess, Izuku said. You really are incredible. As a first year I wasn't nearly as good as you are now, Nejire said. Izuku said somewhat dejectedly, well, we've lived very different lives too. How about this? Once you get your license we'll go see my parents and tell them that you're my boyfriend. Nejire responded. Izuku questioned, sure, but why mention that now? No offense, I'd like to see them and be proud of you as my girl, but why mention it when I talked about having different lives? Izuku responded. Well, maybe you'd like it knowing they approve of you as well. Besides, after the sports festival they told me about how impressive you were and if I've seen it as well, Nejire said. Well, that would be nice if they approved of me, however I don't know if they will once they know more about me, Izuku said. Nejire winked and said, they'll have to because I'm not going to let you go. That's good to know. I bring you to see my mom, however I still don't know if she's alive or where she would be, Izuku said. Nejire put her arms around him and embraced him, saying, don't worry, we'll find her someday. And she can be proud of who you've become, thanks Nejire. Nejire then lay beside Izuku, her eyes closed and her head resting on his shoulder as he lay on his back in the grass. She had a calm smile on her face when Izuku looked at her. Izuku reflected, I never really thought anyone could be this peaceful when I was on the run from the villains, but now that I'm in Ua and met Nejire, I feel at peace myself. After lying in that position for a few hours, they both returned to their dorms. Izuku and his classmates went out to dinner and continued to chat. Kaminari talked about how his quirk helped him fight more effectively, Bakugo boasted about his new special move, and Kirishima said he could harden his body even more than before. However, Mineta wanted to peek at the girls and grab them at specific spots, so Asui demonstrated her quirk to everyone. Then Asui grabbed his underwear and pulled it over his head, making herself invisible. Mineta tried to remove it from his head while he was screaming in agony, but because of his peculiarity, it remained there for a few hours. That made everyone laugh. According to Kaminari, I must ask, he inquired, what will this exam be about? You know, for once Mr. No Brains actually asks a good question. Bakugo stated. Hey, thanks Bakugo, see you can be me. Hey, I'm not Mr. No Brains. Kaminari responded. I know that this will decide who will take a shot at the license exam. Izuku replied. If you pass, you can go for the license exam. If you fail, you'll have to try next time, Izuku said. Kaminari inquired, how do you know about this? Mina said, yeah Izuku, how do you know that? When that Nomu attack was a few months ago, I was a part of that fight. I captured the hero killer Stain, However, if it wasn't for Mirio, Najire and Tamaki, I would have gotten in trouble. The chief of police explained this to Aizawa and he decided to train all of us for the license exam. Izuku clarified. Mina exclaimed in surprise, so it's your fault we had to work so hard, I guess, basically, Izuku said bluntly. You little, Kaminari said as Izuku used his quirk, instantly activating it and frying his brain with a tiny shock. Everyone was laughing once more. Actually, this is a good thing. If we have our licenses as first years, then we can start on real hero work earlier and gain more experience before graduating, Momo said. Well, there's that too, but mostly it's because of Izuku just jumping in whenever he wants to, Bakugo said. Izuku said, well, you can't argue with that. Following that, they all continued to talk for a short while before turning in for the night. Over the course of the following few days, Izuku spent more time with Najire, the others perfected their special moves, and finally everyone was prepared. Finally, the day of the UA exam came. To confront their individual shortcomings, everyone formed teams, but thus far, everyone has succeeded. Izuku and Bakugo versus All Might was the final bout. Bakugo inquired, so how do you want to do it? Nice and easy, Izuku said, grinning broadly. Bakugo questioned, take him head on? Izuku said, take him head on, sounds like a plan. Bakugo grinned before he spoke. Izuku smiled as well. They heard about the exam and wanted to see how they would do. Mirio, Tamaki, and Najire came looking as well. They were worried about Izuku and hoped he would pass, but his chances appeared slim because they had to face All Might. So far, everyone had passed. Kirishima said, nah, for them this will be easy. All of the teachers were ordered to hold back against us, otherwise we would have been easy pickings at moments, he stated. Aizawa said, if I were you, I wouldn't be so sure. Sure, we all held back, especially Powerloader, Snipe and Nezu. They could easily kill some of you if they wanted. However, don't forget about Izuku. He won against Endeavor, the number 2 hero, and overpowered him in raw power. In raw power alone, he isn't too far off from All Might, Aizawa said. However, that lightning makes Izuku faster and more flexible than All Might, and his close combat moves count as 2 moves. There's the force of his punch but also the lightning aftermath to count, Aizawa said. All Might has been ordered to not hold back. Those two are in terms of skill, the top we have in our class. They come close to the big 3, maybe even equal if not better. To top it off, Izuku has surpassed everyone in this school in terms of power, speed, flexibility, but he also has the most experience in fights, explained Aizawa. So Izuku is actually a teenager with the power and experience of an adult pro hero. Is that what you're saying? Replied Mirio. Basically yes, as of now doesn't really have a weakness in battle, however he does have a weakness outside of that which could cost him someday, Aizawa said. Najire, what would that be? Aizawa said, depending on the person, his feelings to protect. We know he came here kind of depressed, and lately he's been really opening up to everyone, however his desire to protect also became stronger. Najire, we all know you two have a relationship, but if say, a villain would take you away the moment he finds out about it, and a clue about where you are, he'll be already there before any of us can make a move, even if it's a trap, Aizawa said. Najire sadly questioned, so his feelings for me, or his weakness? I wouldn't say it like that. Those feelings might also be able to save him someday. He has a reason to stay alive, a reason to not give up, a reason to keep going no matter what, Aizawa said. But if this exam is about to be able to go to the license exam, and facing your weakness, why are those two together? And why are they facing All Might? Tamaki inquired. Because we have no one strong enough to face those two. Bakugo on his own wouldn't be able to take All Might. He lacks the speed and power to do so. However, we all know how Izuku fought against that Nomu at the USJ. He was handling it better than All Might was. It's either because Izuku is stronger, or All Might has been weakened that much, Aizawa said. One thing is for sure, Izuku is definitely faster, said he. Okay, let's get started. Izuku and Bakugo heard. He's coming, Izuku said. Bakugo appeared somewhat taken aback. Izuku exclaimed, straight ahead. As he and Bakugo both hurled All Might back with their quirk. Bakugo exclaimed, you can see him. Well, I can actually move faster than he does, so I'm able to see him, yeah. And I know you have the reflection speed to counter him even if you can't see him, Izuku said. All Might asked, is that right? As he appeared and slammed down on Izuku, but Izuku vanished as soon as he did. Izuku seriously said, I told you that I can see your moves, as he gave All Might a backward kick to the head. All Might crashed into the ground and was launched away, but he continued to move. When he finally stopped and the dust settled, It appeared as though an airplane had struck the earth, destroying the ground and creating a crater-like line that led to the place where everyone might have stopped. When they saw this, everyone gasped. The recovery girl exclaimed, "This boy is incredible." Nezu said, "He sure is," as he materialized out of nowhere. "I told All Might to go all out." He was skeptical about it, however this should show him that he really has to. Nezu said. Everyone may have woken up. Man, young Izuku really isn't pulling any punches here, he's really fighting seriously. Nezu was right. I shouldn't hold back. If I do, I might get in trouble, said All Might. Izuku questioned, "You still want to fight?" Then, Bakugo used a massive explosion to blast away all the might that had appeared in front of him. He immediately shot back towards them after landing. Bakugo deterred All Might with a flurry of explosions. He could have blocked them with his arms in front of him, but he opened them wide with a lot of force, creating an opening, and blew everything away. Izuku put his hand on All Might's chest and drew nearer. He uttered the word, "Thunderclap," as All Might launched a powerful reply. Bakugo immediately took advantage of the situation to launch an attack, but he was able to prevent himself from being launched too far back. Everything was trembling. What just did he do to me? All Might have thought, given how much his arms were shackled. Bakugo yelled, "Don't get distracted now, All Might," as he spun around, pointing his hands in All Might's direction. Each time he did, he threw an explosion at All Might. He abruptly succeeded in grabbing Bakugo and hurling him away, severely rebuffing All Might. Bakugo was swiftly captured by Izuku, who then landed. Izuku said, "Wanna show them our new super moves?" Bakugo said, "Sure, let's show them something badass." All may have said, "Super moves? You two really are taking this seriously, aren't you?" Bakugo opened a small area on his left hand and put it in front of his right hand, holding it up. Bakugo said, "All Might, be sure not to die from this." He exclaimed, "A pea shot," as a blast of his explosive power blasted at All Might. Everyone, with the exception of Izuku, appeared astounded by the move and the power it possessed. Only by combining the punch with air pressure was All Might able to block it with his fist. With so much power being used, All Might was panting heavily. Bakugo said, "Izuku, it's your turn." Izuku paused for a second. "All Might," he remarked. He said, "Young Midoriya, what is it?" With everyone's eyes wide, Izuku said, "This is just an exam, so I want to ask you right now, before I risk killing you." Izuku asked gravely, "Are you able to take on a stronger hit than that? Or have you used too much power?" "You won't kill me so easily, young Izuku, don't worry about it, act like I'm a villain," said All Might. "All Might, I'm serious, we could easily win like we are fighting now, but I want to show you my power, this move of mine. It really can kill you if you're not at full power, so if you're not able to bring out your full power, then I won't use it," Izuku said. Mirio questioned, "Is his attack really that powerful?" Aizawa gave a nod. "I don't know what it is." He asked Ectoplasm to help him with clones. However, Ectoplasm was terrified of his power and told him that his clones was ripped to shreds, Aizawa said. Air pressure swirled around him as he truly powered up to 100%. "I'm able to use full power, so come at me with everything you've got," All Might have said seriously. As he assumed a monstrous posture, Izuku said, "Don't let up for even a second." Then, as everyone could see the force emanating from All Might's back, he shot towards him with tremendous speed and delivered a powerful blow. All Might was already panting heavily, but Izuku's lightning formed lines that eventually formed a star. Then, as All Might kicked up beneath his jaw to propel All Might upward, Izuku shot beneath him. "Raging lightning demolition," Izuku exclaimed as each point of the star he had formed with lightning emitted several streams of lightning that all blasted in all directions, causing significant impact damage in addition to a great deal of lightning damage in the aftermath. After finishing his attack, All Might collapsed to the ground, panting and his clothing torn to pieces. Izuku was panting heavily on his knees. As he nearly passed out, he said, "This move will really have to stay as a last resort, it seems." As they made their way to the gate to pass the test, Bakugo assisted him in standing up. As soon as it was announced that Izuku and Bakugo have won, everyone rushed outside to join Izuku and Bakugo. Some students joined Aizawa, Nezu, and Recovery Girl to support everyone's strength. Kirishima exclaimed, "Dude, that move was insane. Both of you," he hurriedly added. "My move will be a last resort though, as it drains almost all my energy," Izuku said. Kirishima said, "It's still impressive." Bakugo nodded and gave Izuku to Najire, who said, "I'll take him from you." Izuku was laid on his back by her. "I'm sorry you have to carry me. I hope I'm not too heavy," Izuku said. Who do you think you're talking to? I'm a hero too, you know. I'm strong enough to carry someone on my back, she said. Izuku put his head in her neck and said, I'm glad to hear it. Izuku said, your hair is so soft, as he drifted off to sleep. I'll bring him to his room. Could someone show me where his room is, please? She said. Iida said, I'll take you there. Thank you, she said, smiling. She then took Izuku to his room, and they both walked back to the dorm. She put him on his bed and took a seat next to him. Looking at Izuku, she said softly, I'm really a lucky girl to have such a kind but strong boyfriend. She wanted to leave after kissing his head, but Izuku held her hand while he slept. While he was asleep, he said, please don't go. Najire was taken aback at first, but then she grinned and lay down next to him, putting her head against his and her arm around him. Izuku and his class were standing in front of the stadium where the exam would be held on the day of the license, which had finally arrived. All right, are you all ready to show them what you're made of? Asked Aizawa. They all yelled, yes sir, as they entered. After donning their superhero outfits, everyone made their way to the waiting area. It was explained that the exam would consist of 2 parts. The first would involve them placing targets on their bodies and using balls to hit the targets of other people. Everyone received balls and targets to put on. Izuku put his on his right shoulder, then under his left chest, and finally on his right hip. Everyone had 2 minutes to get to their favorite spot. All right, Izuku said, let's all stay together. Bakugo yelled, over my dead body, and fled. He was followed by Kirishima and Kaminari. I'm fighting on my own as well, my quirk isn't good in a big group, Todoroki said. Mineta, why do you want us to stay together, Midoriya? This will probably be a battle of schools. If so, ours has a very big disadvantage, Izuku said. When Mina asked, why is that? Momo said, the sports festival. As he began to run with the others following, Izuku said, all right, the sports festival is televised across the nation, so everyone already knows how we use our quirks, so they'll probably go for us first. Ojiro said, so what do we do now then? Izuku said, for now, let's stick together, but then several schools arrived and they heard a loud zoomer. Shindo from Ketsubutsu Academy said, it's awful to be you guys, because we know everything about you because of the sports festival. Every student from the various schools threw a ball at them. Momo created shields to protect the left. Mina used her acid to stop the balls at the back of the group. Tokiyami covered himself in dark shadow and immediately swiped the balls on the right, and Izuku shouted lightning to block the front. Mineta said, Midoriya, what do we do now? There are too many. Mineta is right, we'll have to think of something. Iida said. For now we have to stand our ground, eventually they have to split us up, or they'll mess up. Either way, if we act now, then we'll be the ones to fail, Izuku said. The other schools made another attempt, but they were able to block every ball this time by employing their peculiarities. After that, Shindo put his hands on the ground and used his tremoring earth to split Ua and the other schools apart, destroying the field entirely. Izuku remained with Momo, Juru, and Shoji. However, they were unaware of who remained together or the well-being of any of his classmates. You 3 all right? Inquired Izuku. Yeah, you were right, they did both, they both messed up and split us up, said Momo. Juru said, so what do we do now? I can hear them all around us. Izuku said, we'll have to leave here for the time being. Yeah, but where to? We don't exactly have an ideal team to win this, Shoji replied. Izuku questioned, why do you think so? Well, you're a power, speed type, however Juru and I are mostly for detection. Momo can create things but it's very limited, Shoji clarified. Izuku said, and that's exactly why we'll make it, as the others became perplexed. Momo said, what do you mean? Juru can hear the enemy, and also from what direction. Shoji can use multi-arms to make his eyes see while keeping his body hidden. Since the eye isn't that big, it's still hard to see for anyone else. I've got binding moves to bind the enemy so we can tag their targets. We'll just bind enough people for all of us, then we can win this, Izuku said. With some insecurity, Momo questioned, you mentioned everyone but me. What do you want me to do? You can think of the best way to approach things. Also, I'd like you to stay on guard for defense if we need it. You can create a strong shield. If you can block a first blow, then I'm also able to back you up, and since you know a lot, you might be able to help me with something that I tried to do, Izuku said with a grin that gave Momo an of trust. When Momo said, all right, but where do we put this in motion? Well, we'll need to tag 3 marks on 2 people. We need a place with some good hiding spots, but there also have to be quite some people, Izuku said. We can try the city part over there. We can use the alleys and buildings. The bridge is too open. The same is for the mountainside and the water side, so that would be our best bet, or we'll have to stay between the destroyed rubble here, Momo clarified. Izuku inquired, where do you think we'll have the most success? According to Momo, the city for sure, Izuku said. All right, let's head there then. They arrived there in a hurry, entered a tall building, and reached the roof. When Jiru said, all right, so what now? Jiru, please use your earphone jack to listen if there are enemies, Momo said. Then, while listening, she plugged them into the ground. There are a few in an alley behind us, and I hear people coming up here. I'd say 2 each, Jiru said. Shoji, keep watch over what the 2 in the alley do. Izuku, please be ready to bind the 2 people coming up, Momo said. After that, Izuku made a lightning bow and pulled it back so that it was ready to shoot. A moment later, 2 people ran outside. Izuku said, lightning bind multi-shot, as he hurled 2 lightning arrows in their direction. They were bound by the arrow's direct contact. Alright, good job Izuku. Shoji, how is it on your end? Momo responded. According to Shoji, they got away. Momo said hesitantly, okay, but who will tag those 2 then? You guys go ahead. Even alone I could probably make it, so I'm not too worried, Izuku said. Well, since you made me make the decisions, I'll stay with you till the end, said Momo. Momo said, Jiru and Shoji, you can tag those 2, as they nodded and approached them. A sparkle caught Momo's attention in the distance, and she instantly made a shield in time to block an attack. Izuku drew back as he prepared an arrow after noticing the sparkle. Izuku said, Momo, do you know anything about sniping? A little. Depending on the distance, you'll have to take the wind into account, as well as the force you give it, and you'll have to stay still yourself, Momo said. Thanks, I see, Izuku said, closing one eye to aim. Izuku thought, if she can shoot us with such accuracy, I should be able to hit her if I aim at her left shoulder. There wasn't much wind, and she wasn't that far away. Here goes, Izuku said, launching the arrow with amazing force. Shoji saw that Izuku's arrow struck the center of the girl's chest after gaining some distance with his dupli arms. Shoji remarked, nice shot. It landed in the middle of her chest. Jiru said, wow, that's Incra, as Izuku surrounded them with lightning, thwarting several quirk attacks. Izuku exclaimed, go inside, and everyone followed his instructions. They discovered a room with 1 door leading to the roof and 2 doors leading outside. Momo inquired, Jiru, how many are there? Around 6, she said. Abruptly, a laser was used to burn one of the doors shut. Well, 1 outweigh, and 6 enemies. If we win, then we all make it to the next round, Izuku said. According to Shoji, but if we don't, Jiru went on, then we'll lose here. Momo concluded, and all of the effort will be for nothing. Don't worry, I'm not letting any of you get taken out, Izuku said. As everyone began to feel lightheaded, sound waves were suddenly thrown through the door. Jiru pushed them back with her own sound waves. They both stopped after a while. As he prepared his bow, Izuku said, everyone stick close to a wall. Before the door opened, Momo, Jiru, and Shoji hurriedly stood against a wall. Izuku uttered the words, binding arrow split shot. As his arrow multiplied until 6 arrows were produced, 5 of which struck their target before the final one was blocked by a sword. Being the leader, a girl said, not bad, I expected as much from you. Who are you? Inquired Izuku. As she approached, she said, you don't have to know, you'll drop out here anyway. Izuku said, you sure about that? As he suddenly bounded behind her. The girl anticipated this and slashed her sword at him with the back of it, but Izuku ducked as Jiru used her sound waves to make her headache and drop her sword. Shoji swiftly grabbed her arms as Momo tied her up with a rope. As they all tagged their opponents and advanced to the following round, Momo said, well, let's tag them all down. Todoroki, Uraraka, and Shiro had already entered the waiting area when they did, and then all of the other people entered at once. Momo said, I see everyone made it. Mina said, yeah, but it was close at times. She questioned Izuku's group. How did it go with you guys? Shoji said, well, ask those 2. They're the reason we made it. We were boxed in by another school, Jiru says. Shortly after, the next round was set to begin, and everyone cheered that they had all survived. All participants were instructed to walk around the 4 exam areas, and as they did so, the areas began to explode. They heard someone say, it's your job to rescue the people, because a terrorist group placed bombs and they are now exploding. Izuku then saw someone fall from the building after noticing a building collapsing. Izuku leapt up to catch the person who was falling and swiftly charged his lightning. Are you alright? Inquired Izuku. He caught someone who had cuts all over his body and blood on his head. They were designed to give the test the most realistic feel. Izuku hurried the person to the first aid station, but as soon as he arrived and described what had happened, a nearby wall exploded, revealing Gang Orca and numerous crew members. Now tell me, wannabe heroes, can you save and protect at the same time? Will you save? Or will you fight? Or maybe, will you run away? He demanded. Izuku informed the other test takers, this is all part of the exam. Shindo from Ketsubutsu said, we have to evacuate the first aid station. Gang Orca and his crew members suddenly charged directly at the first aid station. Some of them were armed, but others weren't. Izuku gritted his teeth and exclaimed, damn it, they are all able to attack long distance. With some surprise, Shindo questioned, you sure? How do you know? Some of them have guns. Others don't, so they'll most likely have a quirk that lets them attack long range. Izuku said. Gritting his teeth, Shindo exclaimed, damn, how do we face that? You guys get everyone to safety. Shindo and I will make the defensive line, Izuku said. A girl with a healing quirk asked, you sure? Izuku smiled and said, yeah, don't worry, take them to safety. Shindo said, you sure we can do this? As he charged lightning through his body, Izuku said, depends on how strong their quirks are. Shindo questioned, what are you doing? As Izuku pulled his arms back after crossing them in front of his chest. Izuku slammed his hands forward, forming a barrier of lightning in front of him that bent around the first aid station, leaving an opening at the back. Creating a barrier to keep the wounded safe, he said. This way, I can block their moves and leave the wounded a place to escape, Izuku said. I'll need you to disrupt the crewmen and Gang Orca if possible. This barrier takes some energy, however the more powerful the attacks, the more energy it takes, Izuku said. An abrupt, good to know, statement came from Gang Orca in front of them. Gang Orca yelled, all right men. Charge everything at this barrier and break through it. While the majority fired cement guns and others employed strong long-range quirk attacks using all 5 elements, fire, ice, wind, water, and earth. Some were even able to use metal and many other weapons in their attack. Gang Orca said, time for me to act as well, before directing his sound waves towards the barrier. The sound waves were blocked by the lightning, but Izuku was being pushed backwards by all those barangages every time Gang Orca joined in with his trick. Izuku said, Shindo please do it, as Shindo put his hands on the ground and snarled at everyone, including Gang Orca. Gang Orca said, you are troublesome. As he attacked the barrier. Izuku groaned, damn it, if this keeps up I won't last long, as he began to perspire. Suddenly, ice flew in Gang Orca's direction and the wind followed. Todoroki and Inasa were standing there when Izuku turned to look. Shindo exclaimed, finally back up. With relief. Izuku questioned, can you guys hold off Gang Orca? To which Inasa replied, sure, leave it to us. Ojiro and Tokiyami arrived in the interim. Ojiro said, you need some help? Izuku said, you two came just at the right moment. I'll keep up this barrier as long as needed until all of the injured get away safely. Shindo hammers away at the crewmen. Todoroki, Ojiro, please take care of them, I'll join in once everyone is safe. Izuku said. Sure, leave it to us, Ojiro said with assurance. Izuku then swiftly opened up a bit to allow Ojiro and Tokiyami to pass through while Shindo continued to beat up the crew. They immediately began eliminating the henchmen. Izuku glanced over his shoulder, and the girl from before was clearly concerned about him and the barrier. Izuku nodded gravely and said, don't worry about me. Focus on the injured, I can keep this up, so please just focus on them. The last of the wounded were eventually removed. Was that all? Inquired Izuku. Shindo glanced over their shoulder. He exclaimed, yeah, they're all safe. As Izuku, panting, dropped the barrier. Shindo inquired worriedly, are you okay though? You blocked quite a few attacks. Yeah, I can still go on, just have to catch my breath, he replied. Izuku observed that Todoroki and Inasa were effectively holding him back thus far in their battle against Gang Orca. Izuku then made the decision to support Tokiyami and Ojiro, who were defeating everyone but were encountering difficulties from quirk users. Ojiro got close to knock them out after Tokiyami used Dark Shadow to deflect the long-range quirks. Izuku then leapt to his feet and hurled lightning at the quirk users from above. Ojiro said, Izuku, did everyone get away? Yeah, I'm able to move freely now, are you guys doing alright? Izuku responded. Yeah, those quirk users were trouble, but from here on we can handle it. Help Todoroki against Gang Orca, said Ojiro. Izuku was about to kill Todoroki when he saw Gang Orca swooping down on Inasa from the sky. Izuku appeared closely behind Gang Orca and shot lightning at him in a flash. From behind Gang Orca, Izuku said gravely, get away from him. He was struck by lightning and felt the damage, but when Izuku said that so icily, he felt a chill run down his spine. So, you've managed to make the injured escape, and even took some of my men out. Do you really think you still have the energy to stop me as well? Replied Gang Orca. Izuku said, I'm standing directly in front of you, so you tell me. When Izuku appeared behind Gang Orca, he shot sound waves at him and said, don't get arrogant boy. Gang Orca turned around, but Izuku shot back at his back. Izuku appeared both slightly ahead of and beneath him. As he glanced down at Izuku, Izuku suddenly materialized above Gang Orca and gave him a head kick. Not bad, you certainly have speed and power, and I commend you for still fighting, but that's not enough to beat me. Said Gang Orca. Suddenly, as fire erupted from Todoroki, wind whirled around Inasa. Then, as the wind and fire combined to create a tornado of fire, Inasa hurled his wind in the direction of Todoroki. Not bad, it really is a great combination, however do you still think this will be enough? Orca yelled. Izuku threw his lightning at the tornado as it formed, saying, if that's not enough, then let lightning join the party. Izuku then caused Gang Orca to be attacked from several angles by the lightning inside the tornado. He eventually brought the tornado down and had suffered significant damage, but as soon as he did, Izuku used the tiny gap it created to knock Gang Orca unconscious with a thunderclap. Simultaneously, the final individuals were saved and the examination was completed. As all of the points were tallied, everyone arrived at the waiting area. Everyone was ecstatic when the screen with the people who had passed appeared. Class 1A members had all passed. After everyone received their hero license, Class 1A reassembled and changed into their regular attire, but Izuku received a call out of the blue. He checked his phone and saw it was Najire. Izuku picked up the phone and said, Hey Najire, what's up? We're finished with the exam and just about to head back. But when he heard a reply, his face went white and a shiver went down his back. Hello Izuku Midoriya, it's been a while. Through the phone, Tamura Shigaraki abruptly said, Hello Izuku, it's been a while. You're probably wondering what happened to your little girlfriend, don't you? Asked the man. Izuku turned off his phone's microphone. Izuku inquired inquisitively, Aizawa sir, does this license count as of right now? Aizawa began. Yeah, why do you? As Izuku abruptly fled. Aizawa exclaimed, Izuku, where are you going? He unmuted his microphone. What did you do to her? Izuku inquired gravely. Tamura said, enjoying it, so far, nothing. Well except beating her to take her with us. Izuku said, you'll pay for this Shigaraki. Shigaraki said, oh is that right? Why don't you come get her then? I will, Izuku said. As he hung up, Tamura said over the phone, good, we've already sent the location in a message, I'll see you soon Izuku, ha ha ha. Mirio called abruptly as Izuku was still sprinting down the hallway. Immediately, Izuku asked, Mirio, what happened? Mirio replied, Najire has been taken away. I know, Tamura Shigaraki just called me. I'm heading there right now, Izuku said. Izuku, I know you'll go either way, but be careful, this will most likely be a trap. Mirio warned. Izuku said, thanks, Mirio. I know and I will. He hung up, checked his messages, and searched for the address. So why are you following me? Izuku had asked abruptly. Bakugo ran behind Izuku and said, so you noticed me? I'm not letting you walk into a trap alone. Izuku questioned, what does this all have to do with you? I'm just coming as backup, we've fought together against All Might, I'm just making sure you won't kick the bucket in this fight. If someone is going to beat you it will be me, Bakugo said. All right, then, said Izuku. So what's this about anyway? I saw you running off and having a call twice. I know you're heading towards a trap from villains, but the question is why? Bakugo replied. Izuku then saw another message. A photo of Najire with bruises on her face and blood gushing from her head. Bakugo caught the phone that Izuku threw to him. Izuku said, that's the reason. Bakugo saw the photo and scowled. Bakugo asked, you sure you'll be alright then? As they stepped outside, Izuku declared, I'll save her and stop the lead. Bakugo inquired, so where is the location? Izuku said, scroll down, the location is there. Bakugo said, Kamino Ward? That's not too far off. Izuku said, exactly, I'm going there right now. Izuku inquired, you still want to come? Bakugo grinned and said, I'm not backing down, I still have to reimburse them for that attack at the USJ. Bakugo said, let's use our quirks, it'll be faster, and leapt to his feet before hurling explosives into the air. As he accelerated and leapt onto a roof, Izuku charged his lightning and proceeded to run and leap from one roof to another. They arrived at the front yard of the existing factory without much delay. Tamura pointed to the sky and said, "Ah, so you came. And you even brought a friend. Well, I made someone come as well." He then noticed a helicopter. "Great, journalists," Bakugo growled. Aizawa returned to Ua with his students in the interim, and upon his arrival, he was immediately confronted by a concerned Mirio. Aizawa said, "Mirio? What's wrong?" As he ran back to the dorm, Mirio exclaimed, "You have to see this." Aizawa and the rest of Class 1A followed. After entering the dorm and turning on the television, they saw the helicopter hovering over a factory with a large front yard that nearly matched the size of a soccer field. After observing the group of villains leaving the factory, Aizawa turned to look closely and saw that Bakugo and Izuku were standing on the other side. Concerned, Aizawa exclaimed, "What are Izuku and Bakugo doing there? I don't know about Bakugo, but Izuku is there because Najire was taken away. We were walking back to Ua after being in the city when we suddenly got ambushed from an alley. They managed to knock her out and take her away," said Mirio. Aizawa gritted his teeth and said, "Damn it, that's why he asked if the license would start immediately." Back at Bakugo and Izuku in the meantime. "Where is Najire?" queried Izuku. Muscular appeared, holding up an unconscious Najire by her neck, and Tamura said, "She's right here." In the blink of an eye, Izuku vanished as Muscular was hurled against a wall, then reappeared with Najire bridal style in his arms. Tamura provoked, "Ooh, touched a nerve I see." As he launched himself at Izuku, covered in muscle veins, Muscular said, "Not bad kid, but you'll have to do better." Izuku simply stood there while Bakugo blew Muscular away from him by blasting him in the face. Suddenly, through warp gates, the other league members surrounded them. Izuku said, "I see the other clowns decided to show up." Clearly offended, Dabi asked, "Who are you calling a clown?" "Did I offend you, Mr. Burned All Over, because I think it looks cool?" Izuku asked. Muscular questioned, "You really dare provoking us?" Izuku swore and said, "Shut up, Scarface." Toga said, "I guess you really got to him this time, Tamura." Izuku said angrily, "You'll soon regret doing this to her." As 4 Nomus left, more portals appeared, and Tamura questioned, "Oh yeah? And how will you make us regret it?" Tamura said, laughing, "You have to protect that girl because you're outnumbered and totally surrounded." Bakugo made tiny explosions as he said, "Underestimating us will be what makes you lose." Fortunately, Izuku and Bakugo were still wearing their hero suits, which gave them a slight advantage. However, with an injured Najire, they were still vastly outnumbered. Muscular said, "With this many people and that girl, you're an easy picking. Time for some payback from last time," he stated. Izuku provoked by saying, "I don't need my hands to kick your ass." Muscular roared, "Big words for a corpse," as he charged at Izuku once more. Izuku vanished and then reappeared, but not before kicking Muscular in the stomach, kneeing him in the face, and heel kicking the back of his head, sending him flying in the direction of Bakugo, who literally blew an explosion in his face before slamming Muscular to the ground. Izuku asked, still holding Najire, "You were saying?" The 4 Nomu suddenly began to attack. Bakugo said, "I'll take care of those." After launching himself at the first and launching it with a barrage, he ducked the second Nomu's blow, grabbed its fist, and slammed it to the ground. Then, he put his hand over his shoulder and blasted the third Nomu in the back. He then hurled a large explosion in the direction of the fourth. Bakugo handled them with ease. He eventually gathered them in one place and destroyed them entirely by removing the pin from his gauntlet. Bakugo said, "That takes care of them." After Dabi aimed his flames at Bakugo, he unintentionally blew an explosion in their direction, forming a smokescreen, which Izuku then blasted through and kicked him in the head. As Toga gasped for air, Izuku lunged at her and kneed her in the solar plexus. Then he gave her a head kick, sending her flying twice before he dropped both of them to the ground. In addition to destroying Magna and Spinner's weapons and violently blasting Compress unconscious, Bakugo grabbed their heads and smashed them against one another before blowing them both away. As Najire slowly opened her eyes, Izuku said, "That just leaves you and Kurogiri, Tamura Shigaraki. And would you look at that, we bested your entire group with ease, even while holding Najire like this." "Ow my head, Izuku. Why are you here? What happened? Where are we? What am I doing here? Oh yeah, you had the license exam. How did it go? Wait, what's going on?" She bombarded him with inquiries. A man flew up from the smoke as the factory exploded. "It seems we underestimated their strength. Tamura Shigaraki, you can pull back with your group, I'll take care of things here," said the guy. "But master, we can still fight, and your body isn't strong enough to fight anymore," said Tamura. They will easily defeat you too as well as you are now. You have to pull back, get stronger and fight again," said the man. Bakugo inquired, "Are you the final boss here?" "Oh, yes, I'm the boss of the League of Villains, but you may call me All for One," said the man. As Izuku focused on All for One, he put Nejire on the ground because he had a bad feeling about him. The statement, "Now Kurogiri, I want you to take them all away to a faraway distance," applies to everyone. Kurogiri said, "I will, sir," as he created a warp behind Tamura and himself and warped the members who had been knocked out. Kurogiri said, "We have to leave now, Tamura Shigaraki, please," he said. "Tish, I'll be back Izuku, the next time I will kill you," and turned to leave. "Aw youth, they can be so bold at time, but he was naive to think he could beat you as you are now, Izuku Midoriya," stated All for One. "You seem to know about me. Just what do you know?" Izuku responded. "About you? Almost everything, from the moment you know about your quirk, to the attacks from the villains, to you joining UA. I even know about what your mother did for you." Izuku's eyes widened as one. Izuku yelled, "Where is my mother? What did you do to her?" Nejire put a hand on Izuku's shoulder and said, "Calm down, please." Izuku repeated, "Answer me, damn it. What did you do to her?" All for One said, "Nothing yet," and as he extended his hand, a sudden black substance materialized in front of him, followed by the appearance of Izuku's mother. The dark matter also exploded from her mouth, and she began to cough. "Mom!" exclaimed Izuku. Afo caught Izuku's mother's neck as she was panting and prevented her from falling to the ground. Izuku said, "Let my mother go." The statement, "You know, I've kept her alive just for this moment," says it all. "What do you mean?" Izuku questioned, his eyes wide with shock. As his other head transformed into a bone-like spear, All for One said, "To see you despair as you see your beloved mother die in front of you." The bone-like spear then passed through Izuku's mother's body, piercing her from behind. His mother had tears in her eyes and was shackling heavily from the pain. Then she coughed up blood, her eyes watering. Izuku said, his eyes welling with tears, "Mom." "No." Bakugo, Nejire, and the rest of the audience were appalled, wide-eyed, and gawking. Then, all at once, let his mother drop to the ground. Izuku walked a few paces. Izuku said, still in shock, "Mom." He couldn't believe it. Izuku's eyes widened as he saw the powerful move that was created by All for One explode on top of his mother. When Izuku's mother disappeared, the smoke cleared. "Mom. Mom. Moom," exclaimed Izuku. Nejire wanted to give him a hug, so she put her hand on his shoulder once more. But in order to maintain their separation, Izuku put his hand on her shoulder. "Bakugo," said Izuku. He said, "What is it?" "Take Nejire. And go to a safe distance, protect her with your life," Izuku said. Izuku yelled angrily, "Just go." Bakugo asked, "What about you?" After hearing that, Bakugo felt a chill and snatched Nejire's arm as he fled. Eventually, they used their tricks and landed on a roof that was close enough to be visible but far enough away to be out of range. "First you attack me when I'm a little kid. Then you send villains after me for years. You kidnap and hurt my girlfriend and then kill my mother right in front of me," Izuku said. "You're going to start regretting those decisions right now," Izuku said, gazing up with bright eyes. Izuku's body suddenly erupted in lightning, and the thick, powerful lightning whirled around his body and the surrounding area. Nejire exclaimed, "Wow." She said, "I've never seen him like this." Bakugo said, perspiring uneasily, "That's because Izuku was just pushed over the edge, and what we see now is probably his full power." As Aizawa observed the lightning erupting from Izuku, he said, "This is bad." Momo exclaimed, "What's happening to Izuku?" with concern. Aizawa clarified, "He's angry and most likely using all of his strength at the moment." Zero questioned, "You mean he's always been holding back?" Zero, "Really, look at the screen. Do you think he could go full power if that happens with us around?" Iida replied. Mirio said, "So that's why Bakugo and Nejire retreated. He may have power now, but there is no way to back him up like this," Tamaki said. Aizawa clenched his fists and said, "Let's just watch and hope for the best." Izuku, barely able to speak due to his anger, asked, "Your name is All for One, right?" Izuku still had tears in his eyes, but they were also filled with anger. "Today will be the day that you're going down for good," Izuku said. As he vanished, Afo said, "I'd like to see you try, boy." After blocking a kick with a slap behind his shoulder, Izuku grabbed Afo's punch in front of him and kicked him in the stomach. After that, Izuku drew a lightning bolt in front of Afo's face and fired it at close range. Izuku abruptly shot from above, kicking Afo into the ground with both legs, sending him flying. Then he picked up the strange mask and raised Afo. "Lightning clap," he said, putting his hand on Afo's chest. Afo coughed up blood as soon as the attack hit. "In case you're wondering, this is different from my usual thunderclap. Thunderclap makes the nerves and muscles numb. It can knock a person out. Lightning clap is an offensive attack and attacks a person from inside out. That attack just now was an attack at your lungs," Izuku said. Izuku was blown away after All for One swiftly fired an air cannon at him. All for One exclaimed, "Dark matter," as a huge ball of black mass suddenly sped in Izuku's direction, piercing the earth like damp paper. Izuku was about to take the full force when All Might unexpectedly materialized in front of him and punched him to stop the attack, but this immediately severely damaged All Might's strength. "I apologize, young Midoriya, for not killing him years ago when I had the opportunity. This happened, so let me finish this," All Might said, panting, his body already evaporating steam. "What can a dying man do?" exclaimed All for One as he conjured up two monstrous arms that combined several quirks. For one thing, it produced another dark matter, but it was much more powerful this time. Despite his best efforts, it pushed him back a considerable distance and burned some of his clothing and the skin off his arm. Izuku shot through the massive smokescreen created by the attack, grabbing All by the head. Izuku slammed All for One into the ground and shocked All for One with his lightning. Izuku yelled, "You wanted to finish this piece of crap. Then do it," as All Might materialized out of the sky. He yelled, "United States of Smash," as Izuku blasted off with lightning in unison. After the attack was finished and All Might had reverted to his slender form for the world to witness, Izuku swiftly materialized behind him and yanked him away, just as two enormous fists were about to collide. All for One said, trembling, "That was a mighty blow, but not enough to finish me off," as he stood up. All for One screamed, "You've lost your chance to finish me off, now you want to be heroes? Die," as he joined his hands to form dark matter, but this time it was much larger and stronger because All for One had given it his whole attention. "Raging Volt, max power," Izuku said, forming a ball of lightning with his hands while facing All Might. All Might said, panting and coughing up blood, "Are you really going to try and counter that?" "Don't, he's too strong, he even took my full power head on and is still standing. I won't lose to him, he hurt Najire, the girl most precious and dear to me, and he killed my mother right in front of me. There is no way I'll let someone like him get away or win," Izuku said as the lightning grew stronger. "Raging Volt," and "Dark Matter." They both yelled as the attacks slammed into one another. All onlookers witnessed the two incredibly strong and massive attacks gradually approaching one another before colliding. Some nearby buildings were blown away by the insane air pressure created by the collision. Even though Izuku was standing firmly on the ground, the force of his attack caused him to break through the floor and even get pushed back as he cracked through the floor behind him. Everyone had the same thing. Izuku said, "You made so many people suffer and created the League of Villains," as his blast started to slightly deflect All for One's attack. As his attack grew stronger, he added, "You took my girl and hurt her badly." Izuku's attack started to push back All for One's attack and he yelled, "Thanks to you, my mother died, and there is not even anything left to bury. You'll regret everything you've done." All for One yelled back, "And you'll regret even trying to defy me," as he increased the force of his attack, which was now gradually rebuffing Izuku's attack. Izuku put her hands next to his and Najire suddenly appeared behind her. Her words were, "Full power," as she directed her energy around Izuku's Raging Volt to boost the power. Bakugo suddenly materialized behind All for One. Bakugo yelled, "This is for my Aunt Inko, you bastard," as he withdrew the pin from his gauntlet while an incredibly potent explosion blasted at All for One's back. He was knocked off balance and sustained a lot of damage from the blast, but Izuku and Najire were able to use more power and overwhelm All for One. Izuku and Najire's combined attack destroyed all of his dark matter, and he took the full force of it. All for One up was launched by the massive explosion it produced. Izuku leapt in his direction. Izuku yelled, "Raging Lightning Devastation," as he launched himself at All for One using slash-like and wild animal-like maneuvers. Izuku attacked All for One from all sides, eventually forming a ball of lightning with many points. Izuku hit the ground just as all of the points began to fire lightning at All for One with amazing force. After a while, Izuku stopped attacking because All's body was simply being slammed around by the lightning. Izuku approached him after All for One's body collapsed like a rag doll and saw that he was still alive but severely injured and unconscious. "I'm sorry, Mom, I couldn't save you. I wish I would have known where you were sooner. I could have saved you, but I let you down, and I let you die. I'm really sorry for that," but I've taken down the person responsible for all of this, and I'm still safe, so I hope you can rest in peace," Izuku said as he gazed up at the sky. From behind Izuku, Najire wrapped her arms around him. Najire sobbed in his back and said, "I'm sure she can rest peacefully now. It's not your fault. Thanks to you, the person responsible has been taken down. You won, Izuku." Izuku collapsed to his knees and began sobbing as well before yelling in agony, rage, and despair. "You were amazing, Izuku. I'm proud of you and thanks for saving me," Najire said. "Leaving you here was out of the question. You dear to me. I love you more than anyone in the world," Izuku said. Then he turned to face her again. Izuku passed out from exerting all of his energy while Najire simply held him close to her. "I love you too, Izuku," she replied as she planted a kiss on him. The League of Villains escaped, and it was impossible to predict when they would reappear, but for the moment, victory was theirs. A lot had happened in a short period of time, but it was finally over. 2 weeks had passed since the battle with All for One. Both Izuku and All Might had recovered from the battle, though Izuku was largely worn out. All Might, on the other hand, had broken his fingers and arm from blocking dark matter and from using his United States of Smash. Izuku struggled to come to terms with what had happened and the loss of his mother, but he was fortunate to have wonderful friends in addition to his girlfriend Najire. Even though they didn't have school today, Izuku got up early. He got out of bed, dressed, went downstairs to get some food, and then went for a walk outside. He eventually arrived at his typical location in the park, where he lay on his back with his eyes closed and his hands behind his head. Najire said, "I see you're here again." Izuku sat up and said, "Good morning, Najire." "Yeah, even though we have a day off, I still wasn't able to sleep longer." Najire also took a seat, but she leaned her head against his. "You're still thinking about it, aren't you?" she inquired. Izuku gave a small nod. Najire removed her head from his and used her thumb and index finger to grasp his chin, forcing him to turn to face her. "Don't worry about it, you got the person who did it, and I'm sure she's happy that you're safe. She wouldn't want you to feel so bad the whole time. She protected you so you could be happy, and so you could take care of me," Najire said. Confused, Izuku said, "She did it so I could take care of you." "Well, not really, but still you have to take good care of me, you know?" Najire laughed. Izuku said, "You know I will," as they pressed their foreheads together and shared a gentle kiss. After they separated from the kiss, Izuku questioned, "So what brings you here this early in the morning? Were you worried about me, knowing I would probably come here because I was thinking about that day again?" "To tell the truth, you're right," Najire said with a hint of regret. Izuku put an arm around her and held her close, saying, "You worry too much." "I know, but I can't help it. I'm in love with someone who is quite reckless, so I just can't help worrying at times," she replied. "Well, I'm not reckless now," Izuku responded. "That's true," she said, resting her index finger on her chin while she pondered. She then sat on top of him after abruptly pushing him onto his back and beginning to tickle him. Izuku laughed and said, "Hey, what are you doing? Stop. I can't handle tickling." Najire continued until they were both panting from tickling and laughing. Najire inquired, "You cheered up a bit." Startled, Izuku said, "So that was what this was about?" Najire looked at Izuku with a bright smile and a dreamy expression on her face. "Well duh, you have to take care of me, but that doesn't mean that I won't take care of you, silly," she said. Izuku said, "I am truly fortunate to have you in my life." Najire laid down on him and put her head slightly beneath his as they hugged, saying, "You sure are. But then again, I'm lucky as well with you." "Hey Izuku!" Najire exclaimed abruptly. His voice was quiet as he said, "Yeah? What is it? You remember what we talked about? About when you get your license?" Najire responded. Izuku said, "Yeah, you want me to meet your parents, right?" Najire said uneasily, "Do you still want that? I mean, I know you love me and all, but a lot has happened, and well, you know." Izuku gave Najire a startled, "I'd love to" response. She questioned, "Are you sure?" "Sure, why not? I promised I would, didn't I? And you said it yourself I should cheer up, and thanks to you I can still keep smiling, and I'd like to meet your parents," Izuku replied with a grin. Izuku then inquired, "So when do you want to go there?" "Well, I was actually going later today. You can come if you want to," Najire replied. Izuku grinned and remarked, "Sounds good, I didn't have any plans anyway. Could you please stop being so adorable for once?" she said abruptly as she gave him a hug. Izuku teased, laughing, "Well, you are being gorgeous all the time, so let me be cute." Then, knowing that Najire would be with Izuku and that they would be returning there, Mirio and Tamaki were already at Izuku's dorm when they both stood up and walked hand in hand through Ua. Morning you 2 inches, said Mirio. Good morning, gentlemen, Izuku said. Kaminari yawned as he made his way to the refrigerator after coming downstairs. Mirio and Tamaki were already with Izuku and Nejire. As he approached Kaminari, Izuku whispered to them, watch this. Izuku said, morning Kaminari. As he stretched, Kaminari said, ah, good morning, Izuku. Just as Jiro came downstairs and started laughing, Izuku used his quirk to touch Kaminari's finger, causing him to suddenly release all of the lightning in his body and fry his brain. Nejire, Tamaki, and Mirio all began to laugh. Yay! Kaminari said, his face odd. Izuku said, somewhat remorsefully, this happens if my quirk makes contact with Kaminari. As Tamaki, Nejire, and Mirio relaxed, Jiro continued to laugh. The others came downstairs all of a sudden. After chatting for a while and grabbing some food, it was time for Nejire and Izuku to approach her parents. Have fun, you two, Mirio teased. Izuku teased back, same to you 2 inches in a sensual manner. Mirio and Tamaki exchanged a somewhat startled look before feeling cold. When Nejire saw this, she burst out laughing. Nejire and Izuku boarded a train to the next city. They disembarked from the train when they got there. My parents live on the other side on the edge of the city. I have to warn you though, our house is kind of big, Nejire said. How come? Inquired Izuku. As she clumsily scratched his head, Nejire explained. Well, my father and mother started an agency together, and here in this place they actually made a lot of money, and you can definitely see that in our house. Nejire and Izuku boarded a bus that would stop near her home. She put her head against his and leaned against him on the train. Izuku thought, she's so soft, and she really makes me feel good. The smile she already had only got bigger when he put an arm around her. But as soon as they got there, her smile vanished and her face took on a hint of concern. You okay? Inquired Izuku. Actually, I'm kind of nervous. My father is really protective of me. To be completely honest, I can never really tell what they think, especially about the decisions I make, so I'm kind of worried, she said. As he gently held her hand, Izuku said, don't worry about it, it'll be fine. She said, thanks, Izuku, you're really sweet. After that, they strolled in her direction. Izuku exclaimed, holy. This place is a mansion, with his mouth and eyes wide open. Nejire grinned at his response as she made her way to the door, but she saw that Izuku wasn't following her. When she turned around, she still saw his eyes wide and his mouth hanging open as he looked around. Izuku went on to say, if I see this, I feel completely broke. Nejire said somewhat regretfully, sorry, we can still turn back if you want to? Izuku smiled as he approached her and said, no way, I'm meeting your parents, you can't make me change my mind. You know, it's kind of funny how you can change moods so easily, also kind of cute, you go from calm to shocked to calm again, but the best thing is, no matter what you do, you make me feel happy and you give me an amazing feeling, she said. Izuku said, I'm glad to hear it, and they proceeded to the door. Shortly after Nejire knocked, the door was opened. Izuku, on the other hand, was stunned when the door opened. The individual who opened the door resembled Nejire almost exactly, albeit a little older. The women said, Nejire, it's been a while, how have you been doing, dear? Nejire said, hey mom, I've been doing great, how about you? Nejire's mother inquired, we're doing great as well, oh my. Who is this handsome young man you brought? Nejire pointed to Izuku and said, Mom, this is Izuku, but then she noticed his surprise. Nejire inquired inquisitively, what's wrong, Izuku? As her mother appeared equally intrigued. Izuku, still in shock, questioned, EHHH, is she really your mother or just you from the future? As she and Nejire began to laugh, the mother said, I like this one, no dear, I'm really Nejire's mother. As Izuku and Nejire entered, she said, why don't you two come in? Izuku froze in shock as soon as he entered the hall, which had large, curved stairs leading to the next floor. With wide eyes, Izuku exclaimed, my god, even the hall is bigger than the house I used to live in. Izuku, are you coming? Nejire inquired. Izuku was staring around, frozen in place, when she returned. Taking hold of his hand, she dragged him into the living room. Izuku questioned, you really used to live here? Yeah, why? Nejire inquired inquisitively. Your hall is bigger than the place I used to live, and it's almost bigger than the commoner from the dorms, Izuku said. Nejire said, well, yeah, I guess now that you mention it. Izuku inquired, also where did your mother go? As she entered, her mother asked, did you miss me already? Nejire sighed, she went to get my dad. Izuku said, don't worry. in a voice that only Najire could hear, which made her smile a little. She said, "Ah, Najire, it's good to see you again, child." As her father entered the room, Najire approached her father and gave him a hug. She said, "It's good to see you again too, Dad. Who might this young man be?" Her father inquired inquisitively of Izuku. Izuku said politely, "Hello sir, I'm Izuku Midoriya. Nice to meet you." The father of Najire extended his hand. Izuku seized his hand and shook it. He then sensed the father squeezing it more firmly, so he followed suit, believing the man was testing him, which he was. The father gave him a smile after shaking his hand. Her father said, "All right, let's all sit down and talk." Her mother said, "Do you two want anything to drink?" "No thank you," was what they both said simultaneously. After exchanging glances, they couldn't help but smile. The father said, "You look very familiar, Izuku. You know me." Najire's mother added, "Now that you mention it, you're right." Najire glanced in Izuku's direction, but he chose to remain silent. With a curious yet menacing gaze, Najire's father said, "Oh well, so what brings you here together with Najire? And are you a friend of hers or?" Izuku declared without fear or hesitation, "Actually, I'm her boyfriend." As Najire was taken aback, her father said, "Ha ha ha, I like you, kid. You're not letting yourself get intimidated and speak without hesitation." Najire questioned in surprise, "Wait, so does that mean you accept him to be my boyfriend then?" Her dad said, "Yeah, why wouldn't I?" The statement, "It took ages before you accepted Mirio and Tamaki," was sighed by Najire. "Well, that Tamaki fellow was way too shy, and Mirio made a joke of most things. I accepted them as your friends though," said the dad. "Najire," was her mother's abrupt statement. "Yes mom?" Najire inquired inquisitively. Her mom asked, "Are you really okay?" Najire glanced at Izuku and then averted her gaze, asking hesitantly, "What do you mean?" "Your mother and I are worried about you. We saw what happened 2 weeks ago and the state you were in. And also how dangerous those villains were," stated her dad. "We're glad someone saved you and kept you safe, but still, those were really dangerous villains. It must have been terrifying," said her mother. Izuku simply stared at Najire without saying anything. She didn't look at any of them. Instead, she was focused on the ground. Then Izuku gently wrapped his arms around her and gave her a hug. It took Najire a little by surprise, but she soon calmed down and began to cry. "You don't have to stay tough, you know. You told me it's okay to show your emotions. It's okay for you as well. I know you've been staying strong because of me and what happened," Izuku said because this perplexed the parents. Her mother said, "May we ask what you mean by that?" "Your past?" Her mother asked as Izuku nodded. "When I just met Najire, she managed to save me, not from a villain, but from my former self and my past," Izuku said. As Najire's parents listened intently, Izuku said, "When I was 7, my mom and I were attacked by villains. Afterwards for 9 years straight I have been attacked by villains. When I got to Ua, I was very quiet, but I also closed myself off because I had been attacked for 9 years every day straight." Najire's tears continued to flow, primarily due to her feelings following that villain attack, but also because of what Izuku had to endure. "Najire managed to make me open up. Honestly, the first time I actually spoke with her, she opened me up so far that I was crying like a little kid from everything I held up for years." Izuku cracked a grin. "She supported me ever since then, even with the sports festival," Izuku said. "Oh yeah, the sports festival. That's where we've seen you. You even defeated Endeavor," the dad replied. The father said, "Even so, Izuku, what you've been through has been terrible." Najire said, "That wasn't everything," as she buried her face in Izuku's shoulder and continued to cry. Najire's mother said, "Wait, sports festival, you had a lightning quirk, right?" And Izuku nodded. Her mother questioned her father, "Wasn't it a boy with a lightning quirk and explosions that saved Najire?" "You're right," said Izuku. "Those 2 boys were Bakugo and I. Bakugo is a classmate of mine and followed me there," Izuku said. "We just finished the license exam when I got called from Najire's phone. However, the person calling was one of the villains. Once I knew where she was, I immediately rushed there and Bakugo followed me to back me up," Izuku said. The father said, "Our Najire is saved because of you. Thank you, Izuku. I'm sorry for bringing this up, but as a hero, it must have been quite frustrating that in the end someone did get killed," said Najire's mother. Najire sobbed in Izuku's shoulder and begged him to stop, but Izuku didn't answer. Her father worriedly inquired, "What's wrong, Najire?" As Najire's parents gasped, Izuku said, "My mother was the one who was killed." Najire's mother said, "I'm so sorry for bringing it up, Izuku. It's all right. I have to accept the fact that she's gone. She managed to make me escape when I was 7. I'm just glad we got the person who did it. Izuku said. Still, you were fighting bravely. Your lightning really was powerful. You even fought against a blast that almost killed All Might, said the father. The mother inquired, are you both okay now though? Actually, I'm not, and I know Najire is not. She's holding herself strong for my sake. Just because I lost my mother like that, however, I already knew she also wasn't okay. I tried cheering her up at times, but that was only temporarily. However, I think it finally got out of her now, Izuku said while holding her tightly. Najire continued to cry. I'm pathetic. I'm supposed to be a hero, and look at me cry after what happened, Najire said. You're not pathetic, Najire. Everyone would be scared in such a situation, said her mother. Izuku and Bakugo weren't. They came without hesitation, even knowing it was a trap, Najire said. We were scared too, and just like you, after then I cried as well, because of the stress, my worries for you and losing my mother. There is nothing wrong with having feelings or crying once in a while, but it doesn't make you pathetic. Everyone was specially scared against the boss, even All Might and I, everyone, Izuku said. Najire wept for a long time. Najire's father, Izuku, and Najire continued to talk after her mother went to prepare dinner, and then it was time to leave. Please take good care of our daughter, Izuku. We know that she's in good hands with you, said her dad. I will, sir. I'll give my life to protect her, and if someone manages to take her away somehow, I promise, no matter where I have to go and no matter what happens, I will bring her back alive and safe, Izuku said with a firm hand. Najire's dad grinned and gave Izuku a fist bump. Najire and Izuku then boarded a bus to return to the train station. Najire looked out and remained silent. Izuku chose not to speak and simply placed his hand on hers. When he did, he saw that she had firmly grasped his hand. She lay against Izuku, still a little upset, after he put his arm around her once they were on the train. She dozed off against him after a short while. Despite the lengthy train ride back to Ua, Izuku gave her a pat on the head. Everything is gonna be alright. I swear I'll never leave you, Izuku said. Then, as though she had heard him while she was asleep, she took his hand and held it firmly, slightly above her chest. Izuku rested his head against hers and kissed her forehead. Najire eventually awoke and saw that she had Izuku's hand clasped tightly against her chest. Najire wanted to release his hand, but Izuku grabbed it instead. Oh, I'm sorry, she said. Izuku grinned and firmly grasped his hand once more. If you want to hold me so close to you, then I don't mind. I'll stay as close as you want me to. I'm yours, remember? She said. Najire said, you truly are the best you know. Just like you, he said. They eventually disembarked from the train and made their way back to Ua on foot. Izuku walked Najire back to her dorm because it was already late, kissed her, and then went to his own dorm. Kirishima said, Hey Izuku, how did it go with Najire's parents? It went pretty good, so how have things been here? Izuku inquired. Mina said, We're good, thanks. Izuku gave a nod and joined the others in their seats. They continued their conversation before Izuku abruptly left. Asui eventually realized that Izuku was no longer there. She inquired, Where did Izuku go? Todoroki said, A little while ago, I saw him walking upstairs. She put a finger to her chin and said, That's nothing like him, walking off without saying anything. She went to his room upstairs and knocked. She said, Izuku? Are you there? But got no answer. Then Momo went upstairs as well. No response, was Asui's response. Momo inquired, Is the door locked? The door opened when Asui tried to open it, but nobody was inside. Asui said, Maybe on the roof. After that, Asui and Momo went to the roof, where they discovered Izuku gazing up at the pitch-black sky. Izuku? What's up? It's not like you to walk off without saying anything. Asui replied. Izuku remained silent. Momo said, Izuku? Are you alright? As Izuku put it, something is coming. With confusion, Momo questioned, What do you mean? I don't know when, or where or who it is, but something or someone is coming. I can feel it, Izuku said. Izuku nodded, and Asui questioned, Are you sure? Well, you don't know when or how, right? Well then there's no use worrying over it. Let's go back downstairs. Asui stated. Izuku said, sighing, I guess you're right, and descended again. Everyone eventually went to bed. As they left their room, Momo and Asui were a little agitated and anxious about what Izuku had said. Momo said, I see you couldn't sleep either. Yeah, I've been thinking about what Izuku said and it kinda gave me the chills. Said Asui. I was on my way to see if he was still up to talk some more about it, she said. Momo said, I'll come too, I'm curious as well. Together, they made their way up the stairs and toward the boys' side. They arrived at his door, but before they could knock, Izuku was thrown from the dorm next to theirs through the door, the window, and into the wall. Izuku began attacking something right away, charged his lightning, and charged back into his room and the dorm. When they looked inside after hearing another loud crash, they saw Izuku had once more blasted through the window. All of the other students joined them as all of the doors on that floor suddenly opened. Todoroki said, "What happened here? We heard a loud crash." "It's Izuku. We wanted to talk about something but he suddenly shot through the door and window. He launched back in but got outside," Momo said. Iida yelled, "I'll warn the teachers," and fled. As everyone rushed outside, Kirishima said, "We have to help Izuku." When they got outside, they saw that Izuku was totally encircled, but the people around him only employed an attack and run strategy. They aren't fighting him seriously, they are surrounding him to keep him on guard, and attack only to keep his attention, Bakugo said while looking closely. The words, "That's exactly right," came from behind him. Izuku attempted to fend off the villains when two of them suddenly came at him. He was able to avoid a metal arm and then backflip to avoid a scythe. Someone behind Izuku launched an attack with drill-like arms, and they immediately leapt back when he wanted to defend himself. Izuku sprayed lightning on his hands and stopped the drill by touching the tip of his finger to its tip. They aren't that strong, so if they attacked me all at once, they would have at least made it difficult for me, but they are only attacking in groups of two and then retreating. If they truly wanted to hurt me, they would have attacked as one or with a surprise attack like they did earlier, Izuku reasoned. Abruptly, another villain entered the fray. He said, "We've got some of them, they have a few of them?" Izuku then turned to see his classmates lying on the ground. Izuku exclaimed, "What did you do to my friends?" "Oh scary why?" said a villain. Izuku exclaimed in surprise, "I recognize that voice, aren't you Compress? But weren't you with the League of Villains?" "I was. However someone else needed me much harder. I'm still with the League, however I'm acting under orders from someone higher than Tamura, someone close to our leader as well," said Compress. Izuku repeated, "What did you do to my friends?" "I didn't do anything, except take a few of them. The one who did that is also someone familiar for you," said Compress. Muscular appeared out of nowhere and leapt in front of Izuku. Muscular smiled and said, "Time for some revenge, kid." Someone in a hood, who was presumably the group leader, said, "Okay, let's go." Compress said, "Ah yes, my orders told me something else. You might want to know the names of the people we took, don't you?" said Compress. Angrily, Izuku exclaimed, "What?" With a menacing smile, Compress said, "Well, the names are Bakugo, Todoroki, Tokiyami, Kirishima, Momo Yaoyorozu, Asui, Mirio Tagata, Tamaki Imajiki, and lastly Najire Hato." When Izuku heard those names, especially Najire, his eyes widened. How did he defeat them all? The strength of Mirio, Tamaki, and Najire makes them difficult to defeat, and the same is true of my friends, Izuku thought. You might wonder how I did it. Well, that's simple. My quirk compresses people in those little balls. All I have to do is place my hand on them and I can compress them," he said. "Give them back," said Izuku. Muscular said, "Whoa there, you're facing me now." Compress advised the man in the hood to try to hold him off Muscular, as they fled. Izuku's lightning surged. "Get back," he exclaimed. "I told you you're facing me." Muscular yelled as he struck Izuku hard in the head, causing his head to smash into the floor. Izuku said, "I don't have time for you, Scarface," as he stood back up and struck Muscular in the face after being struck by lightning as well. Izuku screamed, "Raging Volt," and aimed it directly at Muscular's face. Izuku then chased after the hooded figure and Compress, but the others around him had also followed. Compress put on a hood and continued to move forward, as did the villains surrounding him. Izuku leapt onto one roof, ran over it, and then, as he followed them, zapped to another roof. When Izuku reached the first hooded figure, it abruptly turned around and had a bomb on its chest, which detonated as soon as it was exposed. Izuku took a lot of damage and was blasted back hard, but nothing remained of the hooded figure. Izuku gasped as he said, "Damn it, I never expected them to blow themselves up like that." The explosion and the hard blow had seriously injured him. He immediately pursued them again, even aiming his lightning at them from a distance, but they were always able to avoid him. Izuku attempted to move more quickly and was able to approach, but they came to a shore. There was a small boat there, he saw. "Gosh, it's over if they get to that boat. I can't allow them to escape," Izuku pondered. Izuku then succeeded in seizing one of the hooded figures and used his own lightning to destroy the bomb's internal electronics. The hooded figure was then smashed to the ground, and he knocked him unconscious with his thunderclap. Then he pursued the others right away. Even though they weren't very far apart, Izuku was able to continue using his lightning to propel himself through the air at a high speed. Izuku managed to make it just in time, but Compress reversed course. As he undid his quirks on one of the balls, he said, "I've got a present from the burned clown for you." Suddenly, blue flames erupted straight at Izuku. The force blew Izuku back, but he was able to shield himself from the lightning as the man with the drill-like arms smashed his drill at Izuku's stomach. He was not pierced, but the drill still caused a lot of damage. Before they boarded the boat and hurried across the water, Compress said, "We'll be waiting for you." Izuku was coughing blood from the damage after undoing his lightning. His head and entire body were bleeding. He got up and staggered in the direction of the villain he had knocked unconscious, but he passed out as soon as he got there. When Izuku awoke hours later, he was in a strangely familiar room rather than near the shore. He saw Recovery Girl, Aizawa, Midnight, Nezu, and All Might. When he turned to look around, with a feeble voice, Izuku inquired, "How did I get here?" "Oh, Izuku, thank goodness you're back up. I was afraid we lost you as well," Nezu said. To which Izuku replied, "What do you mean?" Aizawa gritted his teeth and said, "The villains took the students away." "I failed," Izuku said, laying down again. "Actually you didn't, could be taken seriously by everyone." To which Izuku replied, "What do you mean?" "They might have gotten away with some students, however you managed to capture one of them, and All Might here recognizes him," said Midnight. Surprised, Izuku said, "You do?" "I do. I was following leads on finding All for One to take him down. When I got to an island not too far from where we found you. You can only go there on a boat. The island is enormous, but in the center there is a city. Everything around it is covered by a forest." All Might have clarified. "I've been there before, however, it's nothing like it seems. It's supposed to be a vacation resort. There are heroes on the street and the criminal rate is close to zero. However, those heroes aren't heroes at all Might say. I asked their help to get a certain villain, however before I noticed it, I was surrounded and attacked by a whole group of them," said All Might. "I was fortunate to escape unharmed, but I was able to learn something," All Might said. Izuku posed the serious question, "What did you find out?" "The person that leads that island is All for One's direct comrade. He isn't like Tamura who serve under All for One. This person is equal to All for One. At least that's how they see each other. He's more like a brother to All for One than anything else," explained All Might. "I see," Izuku said, rising and going outside. "Where are you going?" inquired Midnight. Izuku dashed to his classroom and then to the school. Izuku was suddenly surrounded by Aizawa's binding cloth. Aizawa inquired, "Just what are you planning to do?" Izuku declared, "I'm getting my hero suit." Aizawa questioned, "I can see that, but why?" "Because I'm going to get them back."
I will continue the story in next part. Till then, bye bye.